His cultivation had also reached the early stage of the sovereign realm. He lowered his head and looked at Qin Feiyang, his eyes filled with provocation. Take this. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. What kind of joke was this? With his cultivation at the early stage of the sovereign realm, and the supreme profound meaning of the supreme profound meaning, the white-eyed wolf could even instantly kill an ordinary peak sovereign realm expert, let alone him. I knew you wouldn't dare. The white-eyed wolf laughed proudly. He glanced at another courtyard and chuckled. Little madman, come out and fight with me. The madman was sitting in the pavilion, drinking tea and chatting with Zhuo Xiaoxian, while cultivating their relationship. How could he be in the mood to care about the white-eyed wolf? However, there was a fundamental difference between the madman and Zhuo Xiaoxian, and Qin Feiyang, and the mermaid princess. Boring. The white-eyed wolf pursed his lips. This guy is a little arrogant. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. He looked at Pei Tianhong and said, Old Pei, extinguish his arrogance. Pei Tianhong nodded. He activated instant time, and instantly appeared in front of the white-eyed wolf. The law of time surged out and punched at the white-eyed wolf. Boom! The white-eyed wolf shattered. Damn you! I didn't look for you. What are you doing here? The white-eyed wolf was instantly enraged. It's the young master's order. Pei Tianhong said expressionlessly, and returned to the tea garden. The white-eyed wolf was unhappy. He landed in front of Qin Feiyang and said angrily, You don't dare to fight, so you let little Pei do it. What's the point? Little Pei. Pei Tianhong's mouth twitched. What kind of name was this? It made him sound like a eunuch. If I also grasped 3 supreme profound meanings, do you think I wouldn't dare to come? Let's talk about it later. When I activated the slaughter zone, why didn't I see you clamoring? Qin Feiyang coldly rolled his eyes. The slaughter zone is so ridiculous. Would I dare to clamor with you? The white-eyed wolf smiled embarrassedly. Then why are you still clamoring? Qin Feiyang glared at him fiercely. He looked up at Pei Tianhong and asked, Other than Heavenly Palace, Divine Palace, Rogue Cultivator Alliance and Demon Palace, do you know anyone else who has grasped the supreme profound meanings of the supreme profound meanings? When the ingrate heard this, he immediately stared at Pei Tianhong. Now he had grasped the time law, space law, and death law, and to break through to the perfection dominator realm, he still had to plunder 3 supreme profound meanings. Demon Palace and Rogue Cultivator Alliance were friends, so they naturally wouldn't look for these people. As for Heavenly Palace and Divine Palace, they were not to be trifled with, but they could still consider it. However, it would be best if there was someone who was alone. When Pei Tianhong heard this, he shook his head without even thinking. No, those who have grasped the supreme profound meanings of the supreme profound meanings are all in our 5 forces. My head hurts. Qin Feiyang rubbed his forehead. The white-eyed wolf couldn't help but frown. After pondering for a while, he asked, What supreme profound meaning does the great elder of Demon Palace have grasped? Pei Tianhong said, He grasped the destruction law. Destruction law? The white-eyed wolf was stunned. Yes. Pei Tianhong nodded and explained, The destruction law is also one of the strongest laws. Its destructive power is extremely shocking. It is said that the destruction law's ultimate profound can directly destroy the sky cloud realm. Of course, if it is the ultimate profound, not only the destruction law, but other strongest laws can also do it. So strong. The white-eyed wolf's eyes flickered. The Demon Palace's palace master grasped the karma law, while the Blood Palace's great elder grasped the destruction law. If it could seize these 2 types of law energies, it would be able to step into the perfect sovereign realm. At that time, even a perfect sovereign realm expert would be like an ant in front of it. It could crush the perfect sovereign realm expert with just a flick of its finger. What are you thinking? Let me tell you, don't even think about the Demon Palace's palace master and great elder. Qin Feiyang stared at the white-eyed wolf. The white-eyed wolf smiled embarrassedly and looked at Pei Tianhong. What about the Sky Hall and Deities Hall? There are many of them. For example, the destruction law, life law, death law, and nothingness law. Pei Tianhong said. Nothingness law. The white-eyed wolf was slightly stunned, and turned to look at Qin Feiyang. He asked, Lu Xingyang seems to have grasped the nothingness law, right? Qin Feiyang nodded. What? You also have someone who grasps the nothingness law here? Pei Tianhong asked. Yes, I have an ancestor, but he is not in the Black Tortoise world right now. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Pei Tianhong and the 9 deacons looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock. Not to mention the white-eyed wolf, just Qin Feiyang and the others. Qin Feiyang karma law, mermaid princess life law, lunatic death law, Qin Batian space and time law, fire lotus time array, Lu Xingyang nothingness law. There were actually 6 people who had comprehended the strongest law. This was indeed a group of perverts. It seems that sooner or later, we will have to make a trip to Sky Palace or Deity Palace. The white-eyed wolf laughed. Let's talk about it when we have the chance. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. At the moment, he did not want to provoke Sky Palace and Deity Palace. Besides, Sky Palace and Deity Palace did not show any hostility to him. If he took the initiative to provoke them now, wouldn't that be deliberately causing trouble? Swish. At this time, Wang Changyuan broke through the air and landed in front of Qin Feiyang. His entire person looked radiant and energetic. He bowed and said, "Greetings, young master. How does it feel to open all the doors of potential?" Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Very good. Even my fire law's supreme profound meaning has begun to show signs of loosening. Wang Changyuan was overjoyed. All these years, he had been comprehending the supreme profound meaning of the fire law, and through unremitting efforts, he had reached the last step. But it was this last step that had been stuck for tens of thousands of years. Now, when he opened all the doors of potential, he immediately felt that he seemed to have comprehended something. Then do your best. Mastering 2 supreme profound meanings, even if it's not the strongest law, no one can shake your position as the commander. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. This subordinate will definitely not disappoint, young master. Wang Changyuan bowed and said with a firm expression, as long as he comprehended 2 supreme profound meanings, his strength would increase by leaps and bounds. The 9 deacons could only obey him obediently. Have you counted the number of people? Qin Feiyang asked. I've already counted them. There are 5,200 dark guards. There are 743 high-level, mid-level, and low-level managers. In addition to the 57 dark guards that followed you previously, there are a total of 6,000 people. That's right, exactly 6,000. Wang Changyuan said. So many managers? The white-eyed wolf was stunned. That's for sure. After all, there are more than 10 million disciples in the Blood Hall. If there are too few managers, then these managers will die of exhaustion. Wang Changyuan smiled. 6,000 people, all of them great perfection sovereigns. There's also little Pei, little Wang, and these 9 idiotic commanders. Interesting. Now, our foundation shouldn't be any weaker than those super forces. The white-eyed wolf looked at Qin Feiyang and grinned. There's still a gap. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Although he had 6,000 great perfection sovereigns under his command, only the 10 commanders, Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan, were truly powerful. Because in the great perfection sovereign realm, it wasn't enough to have more law power. One also had to have supreme profound meanings. As for the Devil Hall and other super forces, they basically had 4 sovereigns with supreme profound meanings. However, he only had Pei Tianhong. Therefore, without the sovereign divine weapon, there was still a huge gap between them and the Devil Hall and other super forces. Chapter 3356. It doesn't matter if there's a gap. After all, we still have the sovereign divine weapon. The white-eyed wolf chuckled and asked, Then, what do you want to do with these people? Although the Devil's Land is much bigger than before, if they all stay here, I'm afraid that this place will become a mess. I've already considered this point. I'm planning to send them to the Central Oblast. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Central Oblast? The white-eyed wolf was stunned for a moment before nodding. That's right, that's right. Anyway, the Central Oblast is empty. Qin Feiyang looked at Wang Changyuan and ordered, Take them to the Central Oblast to settle them down. Also, tell them not to step into the Devil's Land without my permission. Yes. Wang Changyuan nodded respectfully. Qin Feiyang then looked at the 9 great commanders and smiled faintly. You all can go to the Central Oblast as well. Of course, whether it's you or Wang Changyuan. If you have any problems, you can come to the Devil's Land to find me. Yes. The 9 great commanders responded respectfully. They were quite relieved, because this was equivalent to having a pass to enter and exit the Devil's Land freely. Although the Black Tortoise world had several forbidden areas, and under the Fire Lotus's purposeful arrangements, they were more dangerous than before. However, the Devil's Land was undoubtedly the true forbidden area. Ordinary people couldn't enter at all. Therefore, to the Black Tortoise world's living beings, the Devil's Land was a place of reverence and yearning. Also, I've said before that the Blood Hall's administrator no longer exists. Now there are only dark guards. Qin Feiyang spoke again. Understood. Wang Changyuan and the other 9 nodded. Then go. Also tell Fu Chen to come see me. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. The 10 great commanders turned and left, leaving only Qin Feiyang, the white-eyed wolf, and Pei Tianhong. In fact, Pei Tianhong didn't want to stay by Qin Feiyang's side at all, because he was basically a personal bodyguard. On the other hand, Qin Feiyang definitely couldn't stay in the Black Tortoise world forever. As long as Qin Feiyang left the Black Tortoise world and appeared in front of others, people would definitely talk about him if they saw him, the Blood Hall's Hall Master, following Qin Feiyang closely. Just thinking about it made him a little scared. How could Qin Feiyang not see through Pei Tianhong's inner thoughts? He smiled faintly. Old Pei, I'm actually giving you a chance. Give me a chance. Pei Tianhong was stunned. Yeah. If you stay by my side, you'll have more opportunities to perform. In that case, you'll be able to unlock the door of potential before the others. Think about it. If you can comprehend a few more supreme profundities, in addition to the supreme profundities of the laws of time that you already possess, how strong would you be? Qin Feiyang chuckled. Pei Tianhong's heart skipped a beat. If that was the case, then he could easily crush people like Elder Hua and the Devil Hall's Hall Master. You have to cherish it. It's a rare opportunity. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Pei Tianhong pondered for a while and sighed. All right, I'll work hard. Yeah, that's the attitude you should have. Don't think that following me is a disgrace. I'm not bragging, but once the potential elixir is exposed, the number of people who will take the initiative to follow me will definitely line up from the western mainland to the eastern mainland. Qin Feiyang smiled. That's true, but it'll also be coveted by others. Pei Tianhong said. Now that I have 2 Dominator Divine weapons and the Slaughter Zone, other than the Ice Dragon and the Small Beast, who am I afraid of? Sky Hall Deity's Hall. To be honest, I can't wait for them to find trouble with me. That way, I'll have an excuse to attack them openly and fulfill the white-eyed wolf's wish. Qin Feiyang smiled. Pei Tianhong's heart skipped a beat. Sure enough, he still targeted Sky Hall and Deity's Hall. He only hoped that the 2 forces would be tactful, otherwise, sooner or later, they would follow in the footsteps of their Blood Hall. Schwa. Before his voice faded, the horsetail whisk appeared beside Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang smiled. You're a Dominator Divine weapon. There's no need for you to go to the land of Source. From now on, you'll follow old Pei and never leave my side. Okay. The horsetail whisk responded, and then disappeared into Qin Feiyang's body. Let's go. Qin Feiyang put down the teacup and got up and smiled at Pei Tianhong and the white-eyed wolf. Where are we going? Pei Tianhong was stunned and quickly got up and asked. We're going to Sky Cloud Island to visit Big Brother. Then we'll go to the Een Demon Land. Qin Feiyang smiled. Big Brother? Pei Tianhong was stunned. Sky Cloud Realm, isn't that little rabbit's territory? Qin Dage. But at this moment, Yueqing and Yi Miao ran over. Qin Feiyang looked at the 2 suspiciously. The 2 ran in front of Qin Feiyang and looked at the obedient Pei Tianhong. In their hearts, they admired Qin Feiyang to the extreme. Not only did he destroy the Blood Hall, but he also subdued an expert like the Blood Hall Master. Especially Yi Miao, she rejoiced. Fortunately, she didn't listen to Pei Tianhong's instigation and cooperate with the Blood Hall. Otherwise, not only the Blood Hall, but she would also be a prisoner. No, the reason why Pei Tianhong was still alive was because Qin Feiyang valued his strength. But what about her? Except for the Heavenly Joy building, she had nothing. And in truth, the Heavenly Joy building wasn't hers, because it was built by Yueqing. Yueqing looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled. Qin Dage, we're going back to the Eastern continent. Can you send us back? Sure. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. There's one more thing. Look. You've already let the Rogue Cultivator Alliance take over the Western continent. Should the Heavenly Joy building. At this point, Yueqing didn't continue because she knew Qin Feiyang would definitely understand what she meant. Her eyes were filled with anticipation. About this, Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and smiled. You don't have to look for me. Just look for the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Thank you, Qin Dage. The two of them were overjoyed. Although Qin Feiyang didn't say it explicitly, it was obvious what he meant. As for the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, because of their relationship with Qin Feiyang, they would definitely not reject them. Although I'm not against it, you have to be sensible. Whether it's the Demonic Hall in the Eastern Continent or the Rogue Cultivator Alliance in the Western Continent, I personally think that you should share some benefits with them. After all, there's a saying that a win-win situation is the best situation. Qin Feiyang added. The two girls were stunned for a moment before they understood what Qin Feiyang meant. They said gratefully, Thank you, Qin Dage, for your reminder. When the time comes, we'll definitely take the initiative to look for the Demonic Hall and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance to discuss the distribution of benefits. Although the Heavenly Joy building would earn less if they shared a portion of the benefits with the Demonic Hall and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, what Qin Feiyang said made sense. The Heavenly Joy building would only be able to develop smoothly if they were on good terms with the Demonic Hall and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. They would just treat it as paying protection fees. Besides, there was another benefit. After paying protection fees, it would mean that they would have two backers in the future. Qin Feiyang was also very satisfied with the attitude of Yueqing and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. There was a saying that went, if there's sacrifice, there's gain. One couldn't only know how to take but not give. In this world, there weren't that many kind-hearted people who would help you selflessly. Swoosh! Qin Feiyang waved his hand and appeared in the sky above the Blood Hall with the three of them and the white-eyed wolf. The battle waves had yet to calm down. No one and no ferocious beast dared to approach this place. Therefore, other than Qin Feiyang and the other living beings in the Western continent still didn't know who had won the battle. Qin Feiyang glanced around and looked at the white-eyed wolf. Send them back to the Eastern continent. The white-eyed wolf waved its claws and the space-time laws emerged. A space-time teleportation channel appeared. Thank you, Brother Wolf. The two girls obediently thanked the white-eyed wolf and turned to enter the space-time teleportation channel. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, It's so convenient to have the space-time laws. Of course. The white-eyed wolf smiled proudly. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said angrily, Can you not always look so arrogant? Without our help, would you have been able to integrate 3 supreme laws so quickly? I know. I will remember your contributions in my heart, and will definitely repay you in the future. The white-eyed wolf grinned and opened another space-time teleportation channel to Sky Cloud Island. Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly and then walked in without looking back. Sky Cloud Island. It was as quiet and peaceful as ever, like a paradise. The little rabbit was lying on the top of the mountain, drinking the black tortoise divine brew, crossing its legs and looking at the sky leisurely. It was simply like a celestial being. Suddenly, a space-time channel appeared in front of it. The little rabbit looked at the space-time channel, and then withdrew its gaze, because it had sensed Qin Feiyang's aura. Qin Feiyang, the white-eyed wolf, and Pei Tianhong walked out of the space-time channel one after another. Big brother. Qin Feiyang waved at the little rabbit and smiled, then stepped in front of it. Is this the big brother he was talking about? Pei Tianhong was startled. The little rabbit glanced at Pei Tianhong and the white-eyed wolf, then looked at Qin Feiyang and nodded. Not bad. You have a conscience. You came to visit Big Brother, just after winning the Blood Hall. How do you know we won the Blood Hall? Qin Feiyang was stunned. This little rabbit was on Sky Cloud Island, and the 9-Dragon Mountain range was thousands of miles away. The battle fluctuations couldn't reach here at all. Uncle Rabbit knows everything. There is nothing I don't know, the little rabbit said proudly. All right. Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly. But big brother, you are a little unreasonable. How is it unreasonable? The little rabbit was suspicious. You are playing dumb. When we came to you for help, not only did you not help us, you even sent us to the Blood Hall's nest. If we didn't run fast enough, you would have helped us collect our corpses. Qin Feiyang was displeased. Resentment. The little rabbit glanced at Qin Feiyang. Of course. We treated you as our big brother, but you cheated us like this. Doesn't your conscience hurt? Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. Conscience? Kid, Uncle Rabbit didn't want to say it. I felt that it was unnecessary, because it was a small matter. But with your current attitude, if Uncle Rabbit doesn't say it, you really don't know how much you owe me. The little rabbit's face darkened. Qin Feiyang was stunned and puzzled. What do I owe you? Do you think you can beat Ice Dragon with your strength? The little rabbit asked with disdain. Huh? Qin Feiyang looked at the little rabbit in a daze. Why did it suddenly mention Ice Dragon? Chapter 3357. Wait a minute. Could it be suddenly? Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled as he looked at the little rabbit. The Ice Dragon appeared at that time? What do you think? If it wasn't for me, Uncle Rabbit, holding it back, would you be able to destroy the Blood Hall? Would you be able to subdue Pei Tianhong? The little rabbit sneered. This? Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other. The Ice Dragon actually appeared? They actually didn't notice it at all. Pei Tianhong clenched his fists. It turned out that the Ice Dragon had appeared, but it was held back by the little rabbit. In that case, the culprit was still this little rabbit. A wave of anger suddenly rose in his heart. Qin Feiyang noticed Pei Tianhong's abnormality and secretly glanced at him. He couldn't help but frown secretly. It seemed that it wasn't easy to make this person truly submit. What's wrong? Looking at your eyes, you seem to hate me? The little rabbit also noticed Pei Tianhong's abnormality and raised its head with a contemptuous smile. I hate you. Pei Tianhong didn't deny it, but there was a trace of helplessness on his face. So what if he hated him now? Being controlled by the slave seal. If Qin Feiyang was willing, he could even know what he was thinking. In such a situation, would he dare to rebel? Before he could take action, Qin Feiyang had already erased his soul. The little rabbit glanced at him indifferently and ignored him. It looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Do you still dare to talk about conscience with Uncle Rabbit now? I don't dare. I was wrong, I apologize to you. Qin Feiyang quickly smiled apologetically. Originally, the little rabbit was so concerned about him, because if it didn't care, then it wouldn't have known that the Ice Dragon was coming, let alone help to hold it back. The little rabbit said aggrievedly, Uncle Rabbit is sad now, you have to compensate. Compensate? Qin Feiyang was stunned, then patted his head and smiled. I understand. With that, he waved his hand, and 1,000 jars of black tortoise divine wine appeared. So much? The little rabbit couldn't help but light up. Qin Feiyang went on. In fact, the reason I came to Heavenly Cloud Island this time was to deliver the black tortoise divine brew to you. The little rabbit was stunned. She raised her head and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang smiled. I'm preparing to go to the Yin Demon Land. I don't know when I'll come out, so before I leave, I came to give you some. Why are we going to the Yin Devil Land? The little rabbit frowned. There's news of an enemy. It appeared in the Yin Devil Land, so I want to take a look. Qin Feiyang smiled. When little rabbit heard this, her eyes flashed slightly. She smiled and said, Before you leave, you can still think of Uncle Rabbit. You do have some conscience. Of course. I can forget anyone, but I can't forget you, big brother. But big brother, you are really powerful. You even have the power to fight against the Ice Dragon. Qin Feiyang chuckled, his face full of admiration. The power to fight? Little rabbit was stunned. She hurriedly waved her paws and said, No, my strength is far from that of the Ice Dragon. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other. Since there was such a huge difference, how did she hold back the Ice Dragon? There are some things that you won't understand even if I tell you. Little rabbit smiled mysteriously and then said, But I'm curious. Why is the Ice Dragon targeting you? To be honest, I don't know either. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Is there a need for you to be like this? If I don't agree, you won't answer me out of revenge. Little Rabbit looked at Qin Feiyang unhappily. What a petty man. No, no. Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hands and sighed. I really don't know. I feel that it's weird. I'm not lying to you. If I lie to you, I'll die a horrible death. Looking at Qin Feiyang's serious attitude, Little Rabbit frowned. Even Qin Feiyang himself did not know what secret was hidden within. Forget it. Let's not think about it anymore. Little Rabbit was also someone who did not want to find trouble for herself. She waved her claws and a space teleportation tunnel appeared. Go be careful. I will. Qin Feiyang nodded his head and smiled. But looking at the space teleportation tunnel, he was a little hesitant. What do you mean? You think that Big Brother will trick you again? Little Rabbit raised her eyebrows. Cough, cough. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and said with an embarrassed smile. Once bitten, twice shy. Little Rabbit looked at Qin Feiyang with disdain. Don't worry, I won't trick you this time. Plus, with Pei Tianhong here, even if I throw you into the center of the Yin Demon Land, you won't die. Qin Feiyang laughed dryly and looked at Pei Tianhong and the white-eyed wolf. Then let's go. One man and one wolf nodded. Then Big Brother, I'll go first. When I come out, I'll send you wine at the first moment. Qin Feiyang looked at Little Rabbit and said, Go, go. Little Rabbit waved her claws impatiently. Qin Feiyang smiled and led the white-eyed wolf and Pei Tianhong into the space teleportation tunnel. In Demon Land, Little Rabbit muttered to herself. Waiting until the teleportation tunnel disappeared, she took a sip of wine and sighed. Little brother, you can't be careless. In Demon Land is not as simple as everyone thinks. You might die inside. As for me, outside I can still help you. But in the Sky Cloud domain, the 4 great forbidden lands, I'm powerless even if I want to. Saying this, she looked at the sky. Her eyes became incomparably deep, as if she could see through heaven and earth, looking at the scenery that others would never be able to see. Is it related to you? Eastern continent south. A vast mountain range was located at the edge of the eastern continent. This was the Yin Demon Land. Giant peaks towered into the sky. The tallest one was hundreds of thousands of feet high, towering into the sky. It was almost impossible to see the peak of the mountain. In the mountains, old trees were entwined with vines. Each of the vines was thicker than a bucket and looked like a giant python. And on the ground, there was a thick pile of dead branches and rotten leaves. There was a strong rotten smell that was somewhat pungent. Moreover, there were rivers, swamps, and miasma in the forest. What was even stranger was that there were suns, moons, and stars in other places. But the Yin Demon Land sky was always incomparably dark. For example, at this moment, there was clearly a moon in the sky, but the Yin Demon Land sky was covered with dark clouds. Not to mention the moon, not even a single star could be found. As soon as one came here, they couldn't help but feel depressed and heavy. Because of this, the entire Yin Demon Land was very humid. There was even a gloomy feeling, as if they had walked to the gates of hell. Suddenly, outside the Yin Demon Land, above a giant peak, 3 figures appeared out of thin air. It was Qin Feiyang, the white-eyed wolf, and Pei Tianhong. As soon as Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf appeared, they immediately looked around vigilantly. There were many fierce beasts below the mountain. The weakest aura was at the imperishable realm, and there were even a few peak dominator auras. This time, it really didn't trick you. The Yin Demon Land is in front. Pei Tianhong looked below and pointed at the Yin Demon Land in front of them. The man and wolf looked up, and their pupils shrank, because they immediately noticed the abnormality in the sky above the Yin Demon Land. It's a bit strange. The white-eyed wolf frowned. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. He felt uneasy even before entering the Yin Demon Land. Pei Tianhong said, There's no essence in the Yin Demon Land. No essence? Qin Feiyang stilled. Yes. None at all. So normally, when people enter the Yin Demon Land, they will prepare large amounts of God Power pills and God crystals. Of course, for Dominator Realm cultivators like us, it's not a threat. After all, we're using profundities, unlike those imperishable realm cultivators, who can only rely on God Power to fight. Pei Tianhong said. That's true. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf nodded. Without spiritual essence, it was a place that couldn't be easily entered by creatures below the imperishable realm. However, there are still things that can threaten us. For example, we can't activate spatial divine items in the Yin demon land. Pei Tianhong said. We can't activate spatial divine items? Qin Feiyang stilled and asked suspiciously. Then can we enter the Black Tortoise world? I don't know. After all, the Black Tortoise world is a world. We'll only know once we enter. Other than that, there's a mysterious power in the Yin demon land. Pei Tianhong's pupil shrank as he said this. It seemed that even he was wary of it. Mysterious power? Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf exchanged glances, then looked at Pei Tianhong, waiting for him to continue. That's right. This power is extremely evil. Not only can it erode a living being's physical body, but it can also erode God power and divine soul. The scariest thing is that once this evil power enters the body, it's very difficult to expel it. Even if it's refined, it'll take a very long time. Pei Tianhong said in a low voice. The white-eyed wolf frowned and said, Little Qin Zi, why does this sound so similar to the evil power? I think so too. Qin Feiyang nodded. However, they didn't find any blood mist in the Yin demon land like the one in Fallen Valley. Who cares? Let's go in and take a look. The white-eyed wolf scanned the Yin demon land and gritted his teeth. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. The man and the wolf stepped forward and landed in front of the boundary between the Yin demon land and the outside world. Pei Tianhong also followed. He scanned the two sides and waved his hand, sending out a blast of God power toward a bush on the left. Boom! The bush was blown away, and a 1-meter-tall stone tablet immediately appeared in front of Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. The stone tablet was pure white. Even though it had been standing there for a long time, there wasn't a speck of dust on it. Instead, it glowed with a hazy God power. However, there were 2 lines of words on the stone tablet. 9 deaths in demon land. Every word seemed to be condensed from blood, as if they were written by a demon king. They emitted a terrifying murderous aura, and every stroke seemed to contain an invisible killing intent. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf's divine souls trembled uncontrollably when they saw the words. This was a kind of fear. It was a kind of fear that came from the depths of their souls. The more they tried to suppress it, the stronger the fear became. Chapter 3358. Pei Tianhong glanced at the stone tablet and retracted his gaze. To him, everything in the Yin demon land was naturally no stranger. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf and said indifferently, Although the Yin demon land is dangerous, there is also an advantage, that is, you can leave at any time. Qin Feiyang heard this, took a deep breath, and stepped into the Yin demon land. Immediately, he felt a mysterious force rushing into his body through the pores of his body. Just as Pei Tianhong said, this force had the ability to erode divine power and divine soul. Strange. Qin Feiyang carefully sensed for a moment. A trace of suspicion crept up between his brows, and then he mobilized his divine power to form a barrier. But this barrier did not have any effect, as if it existed in vain, completely unable to block the mysterious force. So ridiculous? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and activated the power of law, forming a lightning barrier. The mysterious force was immediately blocked outside. It works. This result made Qin Feiyang quite happy, as long as the power of law could block the mysterious force. But before he could turn around and tell the white-eyed wolf, his body suddenly stiffened, and he glanced at the barrier in surprise. He found that the mysterious force in the surroundings was silently eroding the barrier. What's the situation? Even the power of law can be eroded. This made Qin Feiyang extremely surprised. Eroding divine power and divine soul was still acceptable, because this had happened many times before. But this eroding power of law seemed a bit too ridiculous. In other words, this mysterious force, there was nothing that could block it. It's a bit difficult. Qin Feiyang frowned and prepared to try to enter the Black Tortoise world. Relatively speaking, whether or not he could enter the Black Tortoise world was more important. Because if he could enter the Black Tortoise world, Then he could go to the Black Tortoise world to take refuge in a fatal crisis. On the contrary, if he could not enter the Black Tortoise world, then he had to be mentally prepared to deal with everything. But, not to mention entering the Black Tortoise world, he couldn't even contact the Black Tortoise world. It was as if there was something between him and the Black Tortoise world. Qin Feiyang frowned and pondered for a while before saying, "Horsedale Whisk, try to see if you can isolate this mysterious power." "I've already tried. The mysterious power here can not only erode the souls of humans, it can also erode the artifact spirits of divine artifacts. However, in comparison, the threat it poses to sovereign weapons is much smaller." The artifact spirit's voice echoed in Qin Feiyang's mind. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang decisively left the Yin Devil land. "How is it?" White-Eyed Wolf asked. "Not good." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Of course they could enter. Although this mysterious energy could corrode one's divine soul, the corrosive speed was not very fast. It was the same as the ordinary evil energy in the Nether King's hell. Nether King, hell, and two other types of evil power. One was the evil power that pervaded the entire Nether King's hell. The threat of this evil power was relatively small. After accumulating for a while, they could find time to refine it. The other was the evil power in the Fallen Valley. The evil power in the Fallen Valley could not be blocked by anyone other than a madman, not even the Blood Demon tribe. "What about the Black Tortoise world?" White-Eyed Wolf frowned. "I can't enter." In short, this place is similar to the Nether King's hell, Qin Feiyang said, and began to refine the mysterious power in his body. Wait, the aura of this mysterious power seemed to be similar to the evil power? Was it an illusion? Could it be the evil power too? However, after careful analysis, it seemed to be somewhat different from the evil power in the Nether King's hell. After about a few hundred breaths, the mysterious power in his body was finally refined. He had only been in there for a short while, but the mysterious power that had entered his body took so long to refine. How could he continue to stay in there? After entering the Yin Devil land, I have to stop every hour to refine the mysterious power in my body. Otherwise, the mysterious power will directly threaten my divine soul. Pei Tianhong said. "You can stop and refine it in an hour?" White-Eyed Wolf was speechless. How could he find the fire dragon if he had to stop and walk like this? Pei Tianhong saw through White-Eyed Wolf's thoughts and shook his head. "Although it's a bit of a waste of time, there's no other way. I remember that in the Nether King's hell, I would usually travel during the day and refine the evil power at night. Now I have to refine it every hour. This Yin Devil land is really difficult." Qin Feiyang was helpless. "Evil power?" Pei Tianhong was stunned. "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded and scanned the Yin Devil land. "It's similar to here. The mysterious power here is called the Yin Devil power. Evil power, Yin Devil power. Could there be any connection between the two?" Pei Tianhong frowned. "Connection?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and immediately thought of the madman. Although only a short while had passed outside, many days had passed in the Black Tortoise world. At this moment, on the balcony on the second floor, the madman and Zhuo Xiaoxian were leaning against each other, and their fingers were tightly intertwined. One was handsome, the other fair and beautiful. They leaned against each other and looked at the scenery, like a pair of immortal couples. Their love was deep. The madman lowered his head and looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian in his arms. He couldn't help but lower his head and kiss Zhuo Xiaoxian's red lips. Zhuo Xiaoxian didn't resist, but at this moment, the madman suddenly disappeared. Zhuo Xiaoxian leaned on the madman and was caught off guard. She lost her balance and fell to the wooden floor. She was stunned. What was going on? Where was he? Outside. The madman looked at Qin Feiyang and the White-Eyed Wolf with a confused expression. He was planning to be intimate and improve their relationship. Why did he suddenly run out? "What are you doing?" Qin Feiyang raised his arm and waved it in front of the madman's eyes. The madman was stunned. When he came back to his senses, he roared angrily. "I should be the one asking you that. What are you doing?" "Ah." Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. He didn't realize that he had ruined the madman's good thing. "Ah, your ass." The madman glared at Qin Feiyang. He was extremely angry. Couldn't he tell him in advance before he came out? Annoying. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other. Was this guy crazy? Why did you ask me to come out? Tell me. The madman looked at Qin Feiyang in annoyance. Qin Feiyang really didn't understand. He was simply baffled. He said, "Look at this demon land." The madman was slightly stunned. He turned around and looked at the demon land. His eyes were filled with suspicion. He asked, "Is this the demon land?" "Yes. Go in and take a look," Qin Feiyang said. The madman heard this and frowned. "Is there something weird?" "You will know once you go in." Qin Feiyang pushed the madman in. The madman wanted to be angry, but when he sensed the demon power, he was stunned. What power was this? It was similar to the evil power? Wait. Suddenly, the madman looked into the depths of the demon land. His eyes were filled with shock. Why was there such a close call? It was like a strand of hair. Although it looked inconspicuous, it emitted an aura that made one's heart palpitate. What is it? Qin Feiyang, the white-eyed wolf, and Pei Tianhong also felt this aura. Just this aura alone made their divine souls feel great danger. They couldn't help but be curious as they stepped out and landed beside the madman. When they saw the dark red power at such a close distance, the sense of danger in their hearts became even stronger. It was as if just this strange power could cause great damage to their divine souls. "Little madman, I'm asking you a question," the white-eyed wolf urged. "Are you deaf?" There was no response. The madman looked at the white-eyed wolf, and then at Qin Feiyang and Pei Tianhong. Finally, he looked at the strange dark red power and shook his head. "I also don't know what this is." "You don't know?" The two men and one wolf were shocked. "Didn't this come from your body? Can you not joke around?" The white-eyed wolf was very annoyed. The madman's brow rose as he stared at the white-eyed wolf in annoyance. "I really don't know because this is the product of the fusion of evil power and demon power." Fusion? Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf stared. Did they hear wrongly? Evil power and demon power could actually fuse? Didn't that mean that the madman wasn't afraid of the demon power at all? What evil power? Pei Tianhong, on the other hand, was confused. "It's none of your business." The madman glanced at him indifferently. Then he looked at Qin Feiyang and the madman and said, "I'm also puzzled. These two powers can actually fuse, and after fusing, a new kind of power was born. I even have a feeling that this strand of power should be able to heavily injure your souls." Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf stared at the dark red power with a strange light in their eyes. The white-eyed wolf suddenly looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled mischievously. "Little Qin Zi, why don't you try and see how strong this power is?" Qin Feiyang's body stiffened as he said angrily, "Why don't you come?" The madman himself said that this power could heavily injure their divine souls. Although it was an uncertain statement, what if it could really be done? The white-eyed wolf smiled awkwardly as he glanced at Pei Tianhong. This old man's cultivation was strong. Even if his divine soul was hit, he wouldn't die. Snickering inwardly, the white-eyed wolf gave the madman a look. The madman also understood. With a wave of his hand, the dark red energy shot towards Pei Tianhong's forehead. "What are you doing?" Pei Tianhong was shocked. "Just an experiment. Take out your divine soul." The madman grinned. Seeing Pei Tianhong's face darken, he said flatteringly, "Don't worry, your cultivation is so high, nothing will happen." Pei Tianhong was speechless, but he felt that this power was not much of a threat to him. Didn't he say he would perform well? Fine. He would take the risk and try. Whoosh! The divine soul shot out of the forehead and collided with the dark red power. A shocking scene appeared. When it met with Pei Tianhong's divine soul, the dark red power turned into a bloody mist that wrapped tightly around Pei Tianhong's divine soul. Pei Tianhong's eyebrow rose. His divine soul also turned into a mist that wrapped around the dark red bloody mist, and then started to refine it. Yet, the more he refined, the more shocked he was. This dark red power was even harder to refine than the Nemo power. Just this strand of power, if he wanted to change it into devil power, with his cultivation, he could do it in a few breaths. But this dark red power was extremely tenacious. Also, the corrosive power it contained was terrifying, as if it wanted to devour his divine soul. After several hundred breaths, he finally refined it. His divine soul immediately returned to his consciousness. He then looked at the madman with his brows furrowed together, as if he was looking at a monster. How is it? The madman looked expectantly at Pei Tianhong. Very strong. Pei Tianhong nodded. How strong is very strong? Can you be more clear? The white-eyed wolf was displeased. Pei Tianhong glanced at it and said in a low voice, let's put it this way. Someone with the same cultivation as the madman will definitely not be able to block this power. No way. The white-eyed wolf did not believe it. Chapter 3360. You can try if you don't believe me. Pei Tianhong looked at the white-eyed wolf and said calmly. The white-eyed wolf gritted his teeth and said, let's try, who's afraid of who? Little madman, come. Only a strand of power was born now. Madman shook his head. The white-eyed wolf heard this and sighed inwardly. He looked at Pei Tianhong and said, don't say I don't dare, it's he who doesn't. Pei Tianhong looked down on him. He was clearly scared to death, but still had to pretend to be strong. Wasn't he tired? This power is not only strong, but it's also the same as the Yin demon power. It can enter anywhere. Even if the soul is in the knowledge sea, this power can still enter. Especially its toughness and corrosiveness. It's several times stronger than the Yin demon power. If madman has enough of this power, then with this power, it's enough to destroy a faction. Pei Tianhong was shocked. This was the first time he saw such a strange power. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other. Pei Tianhong definitely wouldn't joke with them. Just this thing alone could destroy a faction. It was too strong. Of course. I'm not talking about the super factions, just normal factions. Also, if your cultivation is higher than madman, then although you will be affected, the threat won't be too great. Pei Tianhong said again. Qin Feiyang heard this and turned to madman. He frowned and said, Senior brother, what kind of freak are you? You're the freak. Madman glared at him, and then looked into the depths of the Yin demon land. Actually, the strangest thing is that there seems to be something calling me. Calling you? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Yes, a very intimate call. Madman nodded. An intimate call. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and muttered. He suddenly looked at Madman in shock. Could it be your background? I think so too. Madman nodded. This? Qin Feiyang couldn't believe it. Madman's past was also related to the Sky Cloud realm? However, we can't jump to conclusions because we haven't confirmed it yet. Madman shook his head again. He couldn't have too much hope. After all, there was a saying that the greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. Since something is calling you and you can absorb the Yin Devil's power, what are we hesitating for? Let's charge in, the white-eyed wolf urged. Yes. The madman nodded and turned around to grab Qin Feiyang's arm. A suction force appeared in his palm, and the Yin energy that had entered Qin Feiyang's body immediately flowed into the madman's palm. This made Qin Feiyang very envious. Brother Wolf, when you were in the Nether King's hell, weren't you able to absorb the evil energy? Why don't you give it a try and see if you can absorb the Yin Devil energy? Madman suddenly looked at the white-eyed wolf and said, That's right. The white-eyed wolf patted his head, and a powerful suction force appeared. The fallen leaves flew and gradually formed a huge whirlpool around him. Qin Feiyang and the other two couldn't help but retreat. Pei Tianhong was extremely depressed. The Yin Devil energy made all the creatures in the Sky Cloud realm tremble in fear. But the man and wolf in front of him actually took the initiative to absorb it into their bodies. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were monsters. After a while, the wind listened and the leaves fell. The white-eyed wolf turned to look at the three and grinned. Brother really has a divine physique. I can absorb any kind of energy. Awesome. Madman gave a thumbs up. Qin Feiyang and Pei Tianhong were shocked. They could really absorb it? Isn't this too outrageous? Divine physique. It was really possible. The white-eyed wolf and Madman looked at each other, and then looked at Qin Feiyang at the same time. Jealous. Looking at the man and wolf's faces, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but roll his eyes. He glanced at Pei Tianhong and asked, Are you jealous? Jealous. Pei Tianhong was still in shock and instinctively nodded. But just as he finished speaking, he reacted and shook his head. There's nothing to be jealous of. That's right. What's there to be jealous of? Qin Feiyang chuckled, and then looked at Madman and White-Eyed Wolf. Besides, no matter how powerful you are, you can't block the slaughter domain. Hearing this, the man in Wolf's veins popped. Can you stop showing off your slaughter domain in front of us? Are you jealous of my slaughter domain? Qin Feiyang chuckled and stepped out of the Yin Devil land. He waved his hand, and Wang Chengyuan appeared. When he saw the Yin Devil land, Wang Chengyuan's pupil shrank. Although it wasn't his first time here, the reverence he had for the Yin Devil land was deeply ingrained in his heart. Unless he had no other choice, he really didn't want to step into this place. Qin Feiyang smiled. Don't worry, this Yin Devil power is no longer a threat. No threat? Wang Chengyuan was stunned. What did that mean? Could it be that the Yin Devil power had disappeared? He glanced at the Yin Demon land, and suspiciously took a step forward. He landed in front of Pei Tianhong, the madman, and the ingrate, and immediately felt the Yin Demon power enveloping them. It didn't disappear. Wang Chengyuan frowned, and looked suspiciously at Qin Feiyang. It's fine, lead the way. Qin Feiyang faintly smiled and also landed beside them with a single step. How can it be fine? Wang Chengyuan muttered. He didn't dare to disobey. He waved his hand and swept up Qin Feiyang, Madman and White-Eyed Wolf. He turned into a ray of light, and rushed into the depths of the Yin Devil land. Demon Hall. In a large hall, the Demon Hall Master, Elder Hua, and Chu Yun sat together. We've finally gotten rid of our old enemy, the Blood Hall. It wasn't easy. Elder Hua sighed and smiled. Yeah. The Demon Hall Master and Chu Yun nodded, and were filled with emotions. As the overlord of the Western continent, they had stood tall in the Sky Cloud realm for countless years. In the end, they were defeated by a junior. They had to admit that fate made fools of them. Chu Yun suddenly looked at Elder Hua and asked, Since we've gotten rid of the Blood Hall, shouldn't we talk to Qin Feiyang? Talk about what? Elder Hua was stunned, and looked at her suspiciously. Playing dumb? Of course it's about opening the door of potential, Chu Yun said angrily. About that? Elder Hua smiled and pondered for a while. We've helped him so much. It shouldn't be a problem to ask, right? Why don't? Elder Hua raised his head, and looked at the Demon Hall Master and Chu Yun, only to find that both of them were looking at him. All right, I'll contact him. Elder Hua shook his head and smiled bitterly. He took out the Divine Sound Transmission Stone, and sent a message to Qin Feiyang. However, after waiting for a long time, there was no response from the Divine Sound Transmission Stone. What's going on? Elder Hua frowned. The Demon Hall Master and Chu Yun looked at each other with a trace of suspicion in their eyes. Elder Hua tried a few more times. Seeing that Qin Feiyang still didn't respond, he sent a message to Madman. After waiting for a long time, Madman still didn't respond. The Demon Hall Master couldn't sit still anymore. He looked at Elder Hua and said, Did they run away with our sovereign divine weapon? Hearing this, a cold light flashed in Chu Yun's eyes. They won't. Elder Hua waved his hand and said, Didn't they say that they were going to the Yin Demon land? I think they've already gone. You all know the situation in the Yin Demon land. As long as they enter, they will lose contact. Teacher, you trust them that much? Chu Yun raised her eyebrows. You have to believe in this old man's judgment. This old man has never misjudged anyone. You are the best example. When this old man taught you back then, I also valued your character. Talent was only secondary. Look at you now. Have you disappointed this old man? Elder Hua chuckled. How can I be the same as them? Chu Yun looked at Elder Hua with dissatisfaction. Good. I was wrong. You're the best. Elder Hua smiled helplessly. He looked at the two of them and comforted them. Believe in me. If they really ran away with the sovereign divine weapon, I promise that I'll find them even if I have to search the entire sky cloud boundary. We'll talk about it later. Aren't Zhuo Tiansheng, Lu Jingyuan, and the others still here? Elder Hua added. All right. The Demon Hall Master and Chu Yun looked at each other and nodded. At this point they could only believe it. Chapter 3361. The Yin Demon Land. Qin Feiyang and the others didn't enter for long before they encountered a fierce beast. It was a cheetah. It was about 12 meters long, with black fur all over its body, but its eyes were like blood, emitting a bloody light. The cheetah's cultivation was at the great perfection imperishable realm. If this cultivation was placed in the ancient world, it would definitely be an extremely strong existence. But in the sky cloud realm, it could only be considered average. After all, in the sky cloud realm, sovereign realm experts were like dogs, so what was a great perfection imperishable realm expert? However, this cheetah attracted Qin Feiyang's attention. "Stop," Qin Feiyang said. Wang Changyuan slammed on the brakes and stopped, looking suspiciously at Qin Feiyang. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was looking at the cheetah, he also looked at the prey, but didn't find anything unusual. Because he had been to the Yin demon land, the fierce beasts here all had blood-red eyes, so there was nothing strange about it, including Pei Tianhong. He also didn't find anything unusual. But Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf couldn't help but frown. Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan had always lived in the sky cloud realm, and had never been to the Nether King's hell. So even if they saw this, they wouldn't find anything strange. But Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf were different. They had been to the Nether King's hell, and were very familiar with the fierce beasts there. And the prey in front of them, although its fur wasn't blood-red, its eyes were extremely similar to the fierce beasts of the Nether King's hell. Senior brother the white-eyed wolf, do you think the fierce beasts of the Yin demon land are the same as the fierce beasts of the Nether King's hell? Not only can they survive in the Yin demon land, but they can also use the power of the Yin demon to grow. Qin Feiyang frowned. The fierce beasts of the Nether King's hell grew by absorbing evil power. It's possible. The white-eyed wolf nodded. It's not possible, it's definitely like this. There's one more thing that I didn't tell you. I also have a sense of familiarity with the Yin demon power. The madman frowned. He was very confused about everything he was facing right now. What? The white-eyed wolf and Qin Feiyang looked at each other. On the side, Pei Tianhong and Wang heard this, their mouths agape. No kidding. A sense of familiarity with the Yin demon power? In the sky cloud realm, who didn't know that the power of the Yin demons was a nightmare that they couldn't get rid of? The Yin demon power was the biggest threat of the Yin demon land. Hell's is hell. Since ancient times, who knew how many living beings had been corroded by the power of the Yin demons and died here? Died titas tts die. S die. They tino, test. S great. S demon s. Now that the two have merged, a new power was born. Qin Feiyang muttered to himself. His eyes suddenly trembled as he turned to look at the madman and asked, "Senior brother, this Yin demon, as Nether Kings, was left here in your previous life?" The madman was stunned, and then rolled his eyes. "Do you really think I'm the reincarnation of some great being? That's not a possibility." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Come on, I don't believe it. I'd rather believe that I was born extraordinary, with good character and good luck." The madman narcissistically rubbed his chin and laughed. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf couldn't help but roll their eyes at him. Others might have been more like it, but who doesn't know who you are in the ancient world? Just as the two people and the wolf were chatting, the prey noticed the group of people. Its blood-red eyes immediately looked towards the group of people, and an ominous glint flashed. But when it saw that the cultivation of the group was unfathomable, it immediately roared in fear and ran away with its tail between its legs. It's quite self-aware. The white-eyed wolf bared its teeth. It was about to eat meat. I wonder if leopard meat tastes good? Continue. Qin Feiyang looked at Wang Changyuan. Wang Changyuan nodded and continued forward with the others. The reason why he let Wang Changyuan lead the way was because only Wang Changyuan knew where he had seen the fire dragon before. Next, they encountered many beasts. However, some of them didn't have blood-red eyes and looked like normal beasts. "Old Pei, let me ask you a few questions." Qin Feiyang turned his head and looked at Pei Tianhong. "Go ahead." Although he didn't try to curry favor with him like Wang Changyuan, his current attitude was still okay. From the general situation, the beasts with blood-red eyes should live in the Yin demon land all year round, and can absorb the Yin demon's power. As for the ferocious beasts with normal colored eyes, they probably came from the outside, right? Qin Feiyang asked. That's right. The beasts are the same as us humans. When they see a good place, they naturally want to go in to look for opportunities. However, they don't dare to go too deep. They only dare to take it from the edge. Pei Tianhong explained. Can the beasts living in the Yin Demon Land leave the Yin Demon Land? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. When he was in the Nether King's Hell, he talked to the King of Hell and said that whether it was the Blood Demon race or the beasts in the Nether King's Hell, they couldn't leave the evil force. Since the evil force and the Yin Demon's power belong to the same source, the beasts in the Yin Demon Land shouldn't be able to leave the Yin Demon Land. The beasts living here can go out, but they won't be out for too long, Pei Tianhong said. In general, they still can't leave the Yin Demon's power? Qin Feiyang asked. Pei Tianhong nodded and smiled faintly. To them, the Yin Demon's power is equivalent to food. Without food, they won't be able to survive. It seems like the evil force and the Yin Demon's power are really connected. Maybe these two powers came from the same place. Qin Feiyang muttered. Hearing this, the frenzy's expression was a little hesitant. Was the mystery of his origin in the Yin Demon Land? In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Qin Feiyang had already reached his limit. The Yin Demon's power in his body was crazily rushing towards his soul. Senior brother, hurry. Qin Feiyang looked at the frenzy and urged him. If he didn't absorb it now, he would definitely die here. The frenzy raised his hand and grabbed Qin Feiyang's shoulder. The Yin Demon's power in Qin Feiyang's body turned into a flood and rushed into the frenzy's body. Seeing this scene, Wang Chongyuan's face was filled with shock. Following which, the frenzy raised his hands and pressed them on Pei Tianhong and Wang Chongyuan's shoulders. The Yin Demon's power in their bodies also quickly disappeared. Pervert! Wang Chongyuan muttered. He finally understood why Qin Feiyang told him not to worry. The frenzy could absorb the Yin Demon's power. Wait! He looked towards the white-eyed wolf. This fellow didn't react at all. Could he also absorb the Yin Demon's power? Before coming into contact with them, he felt that the reason why Qin Feiyang and the others were terrifying was because of the ruler weapon and slaughter domain. But now that he interacted with them, as his understanding of Qin Feiyang and the others deepened, the shock in his heart became stronger and stronger. These people were all monsters and couldn't be looked at with normal eyes. Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud explosion in front. There's a battle, and it's the aura of a human. Pei Tianhong and Wang Chongyuan looked at each other, their eyes flashing. What's so strange about people fighting in this place? The frenzy shook his head and smiled. No. Pei Tianhong waved his hand. What do you mean? The frenzy was slightly stunned and looked at him suspiciously. If it's a battle between beasts or a battle between beasts and humans, then it's normal. For example, the beasts we met along the way, if it wasn't for us being strong, they would have attacked us long ago. But it's hard to encounter a battle between humans in a place like the Yin Demon Land. Pei Tianhong shook his head. Why? The frenzy was even more confused. Because those who enter the Yin Demon Land are here to find fortuitous encounters and won't easily attack. Because this place is too dangerous, if they attack others, it will only make their situation worse. So normally speaking, if they meet other people, they will either take a detour or cooperate. Although this cooperation is also using each other, before they find a fortuitous encounter, they won't scheme against each other. After all, one more companion means one more chance of survival. So, in the Yin Demon Land, as long as there is a battle between humans, it's basically because they have found a fortuitous encounter or a divine item. They will fight for these items. Pei Tianhong explained. When the frenzy heard this, he frowned and asked, You mean there's a fortuitous encounter or divine item ahead? Most likely. Pei Tianhong nodded. The frenzy's eyes lit up and he chuckled. Then what are we waiting for? Old Wang, let's go. Wang Chongyuan shook his head and smiled bitterly. There were already 2 dominator weapons. Was there a need to join in the fun? However, he didn't say anything and led them towards the direction of the battle. The white-eyed wolf's eyes flashed, and he suddenly looked at Pei Tianhong and asked, Little Pei, are there many treasures in the Yin Demon Land? Cough cough. Pei Tianhong coughed and looked helplessly at the white-eyed wolf. Can you not call me that? I'm a famous person. If others hear this, won't they laugh at me behind my back? Is there a problem with this? Do you think I will call a normal person that? As long as it's someone I approve of, I will call them that. The white-eyed wolf snorted coldly. So I have to feel honored. Pei Tianhong looked at the white-eyed wolf in shock. Of course. The white-eyed wolf nodded shamelessly. All right. Pei Tianhong nodded and smiled bitterly. Not only was his ability abnormal, but his personality was also weird. He then said, there are definitely many divine items in the Demon land, but there aren't many at the periphery. After all, be it humans or beasts, they are all wandering around the periphery. Since ancient times, who knows how many creatures have entered the Demon land, and most of the treasures have been taken away by them. So if you want to find divine items and fortuitous encounters in the Demon land, you have to go to the central region, inner region and core region. Especially the core region, not only are there large amounts of divine items, but it is also said that there are inheritances of the power of laws. Pei Tianhong's eyes had a trace of yearning. Chapter 3362. Inheritance. Qin Feiyang, Frenzy, and the white-eyed wolf all looked at him in shock. Don't you find it unbelievable? The power of law can be inherited? Pei Tianhong looked at the two of them, and the wolf with a trace of pride on his face. Shameless. It's not like we haven't seen it before. The white-eyed wolf pursed his lips. What? You guys have seen an inheritance? This time, it was Pei Tianhong who was stunned, including Wang Changyuan. Not to mention seeing the inheritance of the power of law. Not many people had even heard of it. This was because everyone thought that the power of law could only be comprehended by oneself. They didn't know that it could be inherited. Seen it before? You're looking down on us. Not only have we seen it before, but one of us has also received the inheritance. The white-eyed wolf smiled mysteriously. Who is it? Pei Tianhong was curious. Far away in the horizon, but close in front of you. The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth. Far away in the horizon but close in front of you? Pei Tianhong was stunned and looked at the white-eyed wolf suspiciously. It's you. Me. The white-eyed wolf said with disdain. I'm such an awesome character. Do I still need an inheritance? When it was placed in front of me, I didn't even take a look. Pei Tianhong's mouth twitched. This awesome character scored full marks. But thinking about it, this wolf cub could directly plunder and integrate with the power of law. As long as he focused on the strongest law, there was no need for him to go for other laws. Then it's you guys? Pei Tianhong looked at Qin Feiyang in frenzy. At that time, I didn't want the inheritance either. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. You didn't want it either? Pei Tianhong was stunned. Who exactly were these people? They didn't even want the inheritance placed in front of them. If it was someone else, they would probably burn incense and pray to Buddha. As expected, demons had the capital to be arrogant. The white-eyed wolf also had enough of keeping them in suspense and smiled. It's little Frenzy. His law of death is from the inheritance. Are you the only one who talks nonsense? Frenzy stared fiercely. He felt a little embarrassed. Qin Feiyang's karma laws were comprehended by himself, while his death laws were inherited. Didn't this mean that he was inferior to Qin Feiyang? Therefore, when the white-eyed wolf brought up this matter, he did not pay any attention to it. I see. Pei Tianhong was enlightened. He looked at the white-eyed wolf and asked, when the inheritance came, did it come with its own ultimacy? I don't think so. The white-eyed wolf shook its head and looked at Madman, but Madman ignored it. Pei Tianhong was shocked when he heard that. He looked at the white-eyed wolf and said, he's stronger than you. Stronger than me? The white-eyed wolf was not convinced. Yeah. Although his law of death was inherited, the fact that he was able to comprehend the fifth profundity so quickly proves that he's indeed more powerful than you. After all, your three great supreme laws were directly plundered, Pei Tianhong said. That makes sense. Madman finally spoke. He looked at the white-eyed wolf and said in disdain, no matter what, I'm still stronger than you. The white-eyed wolf's face darkened. He said angrily, why don't you look at the process and only look at the results? Then you'll probably lose even more miserably. Although you're stronger than me and old Qin now, We're confident that we'll surpass you sooner or later. Madman chuckled. Is that possible? The white-eyed wolf looked at the two in disdain and said proudly. So what if you surpass me in the future? Anyway, I'm stronger than you now. This is a fact that you can't deny. Shameless. Madman snorted. He then looked at Pei Tianhong and asked. Then, is there any supreme law inheritance in the core area of the Demon land? I heard there is. And there are rumors that there are supreme laws that come with their own ultimacy. Pei Tianhong said. What? He has his own supreme profound. The white-eyed wolf's eyes lit up. Qin Feiyang and Madman were the same. If there really was such an inheritance, then the core area of the Demon land was definitely worth the risk. Of course, this is just a rumor, because no one from the Sky Cloud field has been to the core area. Even I am the same. Pei Tianhong shook his head and sighed. Never been there. The three people and one wolf were stunned. Yes, because the demon power in the core area is even more terrifying. Not to mention the inner area and core area. Even the middle area has 5 times more demon power than here. It's said that the core area has at least 100 times more demon power than here. Even with our cultivation, we can only stroll around the entrance of the inner area. Even in the inner area, we have to refine the demon power in our body every once in a while. But the key point is that your refining speed can't keep up with the speed of it entering your body. So we don't dare to rashly enter the inner area, not to mention the core area. For us, the core area is a place of no return. People from the eastern and eastern continent usually don't have a time and space teleportation divine artifact or time and space laws. If they want to pass through the Demon land to the other continent, they have to go around the inner area and the core area. Pei Tianhong explained. So it's like this. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf nodded. So to be honest, I also want to go in and take a look. Pei Tianhong smiled. The white-eyed wolf chuckled. What's the problem with that? Right now, we'll fulfill your last wish. Last wish? Pei Tianhong's face darkened. He found that he really couldn't chat with this wolf cub. Nothing good came out of his mouth. However, with this wolf cub and madman here, he might be able to fulfill his wish and enter the core area to take a look. At the same time, Wang Changyuan was also looking forward to it. For perfection sovereign realm experts like them who grasp the highest profundities, the core area of the Sky Cloud Realm's 4 forbidden lands was the true forbidden land. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment before looking at Wang Changyuan and asking, Old Wang, where did you meet Elder Hua last time? The central area. Wang Changyuan didn't even think and directly replied. Clearly, he had a deep impression of what happened back then. Then where did he disappear to? Qin Feiyang asked again. I didn't catch up to him at that time, but according to his trajectory, he should be in the inner area. Wang Changyuan guessed. The inner area, the core area, Qin Feiyang muttered. It seemed like finding the fire dragon wasn't an easy task. The strangest thing was, why was Elder Hua in the Demon land? Could it be? Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's gaze trembled, and his face was filled with bewilderment. What's wrong? The white-eyed wolf and madman looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang looked at them and asked, Do you still remember how the fire dragon came to the Sky Cloud domain? Of course, it was the ice dragon and small beast that asked him to come. Madman nodded. That's right. Since the ice dragon and small beast asked him to come, why did he come to the Demon land when the Sky Cloud domain is so big? Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. Madman pondered for a moment before his gaze trembled. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, You mean the Demon land might be the ice dragon's true lair? What? This is the ice dragon's lair. Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan's bodies trembled as their eyes were filled with fear. If this was really the ice dragon's lair, then wouldn't they be sending themselves to their deaths by coming here? Haha, the white-eyed wolf laughed. What are you laughing at? Pei Tianhong and Madman looked at him in confusion. What was there to be happy about? Enemies are bound to meet, shouldn't I be laughing? The white-eyed wolf sneered. Pei Tianhong and Madman were speechless. This wolf cub was really not afraid of anything. Don't worry, if the ice dragon dares to attack us, he would have already done it himself. Why wait until now? This brother is thinking that if his lair is really hidden here, then there must be a lot of treasures. When the time comes, we can just rob them all. The white-eyed wolf's eyes lit up as he smiled sinisterly. All right. If you want to go, then go. I won't go even if you beat me to death. Wang Changyuan shook his head. Pei Tianhong also agreed with Wang Changyuan for once. What kind of joke was this? What was the difference between robbing the ice dragon's lair and seeking death? Only a fool would do such a thing. Look at your cowardice. The white-eyed wolf looked at the two in disdain. This isn't a matter of cowardice, it's self-awareness. We don't have the strength, so don't provoke him. Besides, what if he attacks you personally? Just thinking about it made Pei Tianhong's scalp numb. Because he had direct contact with the ice dragon, he knew how powerful it was. If the ice dragon was willing to attack, the entire sky cloud realm could be razed to the ground in an instant. Who would want to provoke such a terrifying expert? That makes sense. Although he won't attack us personally, I'm afraid that you too. After all, you too betrayed him. Looking at Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan, the white-eyed wolf laughed sinisterly. Hearing this, the two were even more terrified. That's enough. Don't scare them. Qin Feiyang glared at the white-eyed wolf and looked into the depths of the demon land. Whether the ice dragon's lair is here or not, I want to enter the core area to see. I want to see what secrets are hidden inside. Hearing this, Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan looked at each other helplessly. Since Qin Feiyang had to go, they could only follow. They only hoped that it wasn't the ice dragon's lair. Otherwise, even if they had 9 lives, it wouldn't be enough to fill the gaps between the ice dragon's teeth. While talking, the battlefield in front was getting closer and closer. There were not only 2 people, but at least a dozen people fighting. The ripples from the battle were like a tide, rolling over. Like an earthquake, the ground was trembling, and the mountains were shaking. It seems like they really are peak dominator realm, Wang Changyuan muttered. He decisively activated his law force and formed a barrier, isolating the ripples outside. Otherwise it would harm Qin Feiyang madman and the white-eyed wolf. They are destroying the demon land on such a large scale. Don't the beasts here care? Madman frowned. There's no need to care. Because no matter how serious the damage is, everything will automatically return to normal the next day. Pei Tianhong said. Automatically return to normal? Madman was shocked. Wasn't this similar to the God-Demon Forest? The God-Demon Forest was the same. You can destroy it however you want, and everything will return to normal. First, it was the evil force and demon force. Now, it was automatically returning to normal. If one were to say that the demon land and Nether King Hell had nothing to do with each other, they wouldn't believe it even if they were beaten to death. Chapter 3363. Dozens of breaths later, Qin Feiyang and the others stopped in the air and looked at the battlefield in the distance. There were 2 groups of people. One side had 8 people, and the other side had 9 people. All kinds of laws, heaven-defying divine artifacts, heaven-defying divine arts flew in the sky. Accompanied by loud rumbling sounds, the ground kept shattering, and the void crazily collapsed. It was like the scene of the end of the world. So intense. Madman was surprised. They were fighting with their lives on the line. What was it that was worth them fighting so hard? None of them comprehended a supreme intent. They're just a bunch of ants. Pei Tianhong's eyes were full of disdain. Madman looked at him in shock. However, when one thought about it, it made sense. He was a mighty overlord who possessed the supreme profundities of supreme laws. Ordinary perfect sovereigns were indeed no different from ants before him. Wang Changyuan was scanning the battlefield when he suddenly pointed at the ground below and shouted, "Look!" Qin Feiyang's group and the white-eyed wolf were stunned. They looked down and their eyes flashed with surprise. Right below the battlefield, there was a grassland about 10 feet wide. There was a cluster of black flames floating above the grassland. The flame was the size of a palm and was like a ghost fire. It merged with the darkness of the night and couldn't be noticed if one didn't look carefully. Moreover, there were barriers around the flame. These barriers were formed by the power of laws and should have been set up by the 2 sides in advance to prevent the flame from being affected during the battle. This should be Pillfire? Pei Tianhong observed for a while and said, he wasn't sure. Because there was a barrier, he felt the aura of the flame. He didn't know if it was pill fire or some other flame. Pill fire? Qin Feiyang frowned and looked at the two sides. He whispered, they should be fighting for this flame. Since it can make them fight so hard, it definitely isn't ordinary. Makes sense. Madman nodded and looked at Wang Changyuan. He smiled and said, Old Wang, what are you waiting for? Go and get it. Right now, Qin Feiyang needed pill fire. Last time, he asked Xingde to go to Mo Lu, but Mo Lu couldn't take it out and had to find Chu Yin. But because there were too many things, Qin Feiyang didn't think of this matter when he saw Chu Yin. Besides, he didn't want to trouble Chu Yin all the time, because he could see that Chu Yin did not like him very much, let alone trust him. All right. Wang Changyuan nodded and stepped out of the barrier, heading straight for the flames. The dozen or so people were too engrossed in their fight to notice him. It went very smoothly. Wang Changyuan arrived in front of the barrier. Then the law of thunder rolled out. With the power of thunder, he punched the barrier. Crack! Following a series of crisp sounds, the barriers shattered one after another. It was also at this moment, when the two parties who were fighting above heard the commotion, they immediately lowered their heads to look at Wang Changyuan. Their brows furrowed in anger. He actually dared to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. Boom! At the same time, there were a total of 17 people on both sides. They stopped fighting at the same time and joined forces to attack Wang Changyuan. Everyone's eyes were emitting intense killing intent. They still dared to attack old Wang? Madman was surprised. Although Wang Changyuan was once the vice commander of the Blood Hall secret guards, he rarely goes to other continents. Even if he goes to other continents, he comes and goes alone and doesn't show his face in front of others. Moreover, the Devil Land is located between the eastern and southern continents. Most of the people who come here are from the eastern and southern continents. So many know his name, but not many have seen him before. Pei Tianhong explained. It turns out that this is the way of the strong. Only by remaining mysterious can one appear to be unfathomable. Madman bared his teeth. Pei Tianhong smiled bitterly. What did this have to do with remaining mysterious? It was purely because he didn't want to have any interactions with unnecessary people. Courting death. Wang Changyuan raised his head and looked at the group of people. Killing intent surged in his eyes as he directly activated the Supreme Profound, Eye of Thunder. This is the Supreme Profound of the Law of Thunder. Not good. Retreat. The 17 of them were all sovereigns. Although they had never seen Wang Changyuan before, they knew the Supreme Profound of the various laws. The moment they saw the Eye of Thunder, their expressions changed. They knew that they had encountered a ruthless person and immediately turned to flee. Although treasures were important, their lives were more important. You still want to leave? Wang Changyuan was once Pei Tianhong's trusted aide, and was even personally trained by Pei Tianhong. His personality was naturally similar to Pei Tianhong's ruthless. Rumble. Streaks of destructive lightning shot out, and the aura locked onto the 17 of them. No. My lord, we didn't mean to offend you. We'll give you that alchemy fire. Please give us a way out. The 17 of them begged in fear. Why were they so unlucky? They had finally found a divine item. But in the end, a supreme expert with Supreme Profound appeared out of nowhere. It's really an alchemy fire? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He immediately looked at the black flame with anticipation in his eyes. What rank would the alchemy fire be? Right now, he wasn't interested in anything lower than rank 7. However, based on the way these people were fighting, it shouldn't be lower than rank 7. No. At the very least, it should be a rank 9 alchemy fire for it to be so tempting. If it was really a rank 9 alchemy fire, then they would be considered lucky this time. Because even Mo Lu couldn't take out such an alchemy fire, one could imagine how rare it was. Hearing those people begging, Wang Changyuan was indifferent. He sneered. I want the alchemy fire. I want the people too. Dozens of destructive lightning bolts shot out like lightning, and the terrifying aura destroyed everything in all directions. No! Accompanied by a series of screams, the 17 of them fell from the sky one after another, not even leaving behind a corpse. This was the power of supreme profound, directly crushing. A bunch of ants indeed. Wang Changyuan smiled disdainfully. He turned off his supreme profound, looked down at the flame, and reached out to grab it. Whoosh! However, right at this moment, a black figure suddenly appeared and grabbed the black flame before Wang Changyuan. It activated an assist-type divine art, and flew away without looking back. And looking at its speed, it was a supreme assist-type divine art. This sudden change stunned Wang Changyuan. Even Qin Feiyang, the frenzied one, the white-eyed wolf, and Pei Tianhong were shocked. There was actually someone hiding in the dark waiting for an opportunity? You are really snatching food from a tiger's mouth. Pei Tianhong came back to his senses and looked at the black figure that was about to disappear into the night. He muttered to himself and took a step forward. His entire person seemed to merge into the river of time and instantly disappeared. Instant time. There is actually someone who dares to act rashly in front of us. Interesting. The frenzied one's face was full of ridicule. You think Wang Changyuan is the strongest? As long as you get rid of Wang Changyuan, you can get the alchemy fire? Wrong. There is someone even more terrifying than Wang Changyuan here. This black shadow had kicked an iron plate. Wang Changyuan also came back to his senses and prepared to chase. But seeing Pei Tianhong chase, he gave up and turned to fly towards Qin Feiyang, the frenzied one, and the white-eyed wolf. Actually, he was very vexed in his heart. He was too careless. He let Pei Tianhong grab the chance to perform. Although he had already opened the door to all his potential, and didn't need to perform as hard as before. But there was a good saying. If a person can help you, then they can also destroy you. Furthermore, he was now controlled by the slave seal, and had to be loyal to Qin Feiyang for the rest of his life. Therefore, he must continue to perform. For example, the position of commander. If he didn't perform well, would Qin Feiyang give it to him? In short, regarding his future fate, he must not be careless. I'm sorry, young master. Wang Changyuan walked over with his head lowered. His face was full of self-blame. Although he knew that Qin Feiyang wouldn't blame him, he still had to put on an act. It's fine. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. Boom. But before he finished, another terrifying aura suddenly appeared behind Wang Changyuan. Be careful. Qin Feiyang, the frenzied one, and the white-eyed wolf's expression suddenly changed. Because they were facing Wang Changyuan, they could immediately see the situation behind Wang Changyuan. They saw that behind Wang Changyuan, there was another black shadow. The most important thing was, in the black shadow's hand, there was a dagger that glittered with cold light. It was a supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifact. Moreover, the speed of the black shadow was also extremely fast. Before Wang Changyuan could react, the dagger was like a poisonous snake hiding in the dark, showing its sharp fangs and directly piercing into Wang Changyuan's sea of qi. Ah! Wang Changyuan cried out miserably in pain. His powerful aura immediately dissipated. Obviously, his sea of qi was broken. He was covered in cold sweat. He was too careless to hide two black shadows. He quickly looked at Qin Feiyang, the frenzied one, and the white-eyed wolf in front of him and shouted, "You guys go! Go!" The black shadow smiled sinisterly, pulled out the dagger, and looked up at Qin Feiyang, the frenzied one, and the white-eyed wolf. Wang Changyuan rushed in front of the two men and the wolf. Although his sea of qi was destroyed, he still stood in front of Qin Feiyang and the others bravely. This made Qin Feiyang feel quite touched, because this was a kind of instinctive behavior, and it was completely different from deliberately showing it. Instincts were the subconscious of people. This was the most authentic side of people. If Wang Changyuan could have this kind of subconscious, it meant that he had really started to treat him as his master. Get lost! The black shadow snorted and kicked Wang Changyuan. With a crisp crack, Wang Changyuan was not only kicked out, but also had several of his ribs broken. His face was distorted from the pain. Bastard! If you dare to touch a hair of the young master, I will not let you go even if you go to heaven or hell. Wang Changyuan roared. Okay, don't talk anymore. Take care of your injuries. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Wang Changyuan and smiled. Then he looked back at the black shadow and said with a faint smile, If you want to kill and rob, you have to find the right target. Now you have found us. Haha. I can only say that your eyesight is not very good. Kill and rob? The Black Shadow was stunned and said in astonishment, "You actually think that I am the same as those people Wang Changyuan killed before?" No. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Wait, this person actually knew Wang Changyuan? What was going on? Could it be that he met an enemy? He lured Pei Tianhong away and destroyed Wang Changyuan's Sea of Qi just to kill him, the Frenzied One and the White-Eyed Wolf. Chapter 3364. Madman looked at the Black Shadow and raised his eyebrows. Don't be so mysterious. Show your true face. You want to see my true face? I'm sorry, but you won't have the chance. Just die for no reason. The Black Shadow laughed sinisterly. The dagger in his hand flickered like a ghost hiding in the night sky, as it swept toward Qin Feiyang's lower abdomen. Since you know I'm Qin Feiyang, why are you courting death? Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. As his voice fell, the horsetail whisk suddenly appeared. What? The Blood Hall's sovereign divine weapon is also in your hands. The Black Shadow's expression changed. You think it's in Pei Tianhong's hands? Qin Feiyang sneered. What happened in the Blood Hall? Wang Changyuan and Pei Tianhong are by your side, and even the sovereign divine weapon is in your hands. Why didn't I hear about this when I returned to the Eastern Continent half a month ago? The Black Shadow was extremely flustered. He then turned around and fled without looking back. Clang! The horsetail whisk shook slightly, and a wisp of divine power shrouded over. The Black Shadow was immediately imprisoned in the void. Why is it like this? The Black Shadow roared in his heart. This was completely beyond his imagination. Although he knew Wang Changyuan and Pei Tianhong, and although he didn't know why they were by Qin Feiyang's side, the horsetail whisk was the Blood Hall's sovereign divine weapon, so it must be in Pei Tianhong's hands. But he never expected that it would be in Qin Feiyang's hands. What was going on? Qin Feiyang took a step forward and landed in front of the Black Shadow. He reached out and took the dagger from the Black Shadow's hand. The dagger was a sovereign divine weapon and had an artifact spirit. But at this moment, it didn't dare to struggle in front of Qin Feiyang, because the sovereign divine weapon's aura was too terrifying. Qin Feiyang grabbed the dagger with a faint smile on his face. In the Black Shadow's eyes, this smile was like a devil's smile. He couldn't help but feel his scalp tingle. He wanted to struggle. He even wanted to self-destruct. However, the might of the horsetail whisk was like a sky full of frost, sealing him in ice. You returned to the Eastern Continent half a month ago. That means you're from the Eastern Continent. Those who have a grudge against me in the Eastern Continent have either died in my hands or reconciled with me. I'm really curious. Who are you? Qin Feiyang smiled and casually stabbed his saber into the Black Shadow's abdomen. Blood immediately spurted out. With the Sea of Qi shattered, the power of the horsetail whisk loosened slightly. The Black Shadow immediately howled miserably. Qin Feiyang pulled out his dagger and stood silently at the side with a faint smile on his face. It was as if he was enjoying a good show. After the Black Shadow stopped screaming, he raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang. His eyes were filled with fear and despair. Was this the famous Qin Feiyang of the Eastern Continent? Whether it was his methods or his mentality, almost no one in the younger generation could match him. Now you can reveal your true face. After a while, Qin Feiyang said with a smile. The Frenzied One, the White-Eyed Wolf, and Wang Changyuan also walked to Qin Feiyang's side and looked at the Black Shadow curiously. The Black Shadow was wearing a black robe with a black mask on his face. Only a pair of eyes were exposed, making him look very mysterious. Wang Changyuan looked at the Black Shadow and then at Qin Feiyang. Since he knows me and Pei Tianhong, he must have a certain background in the Eastern Continent. Seeing the Black Shadow staring at them without any intention of taking off his mask, Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "Looks like we still have to do it. Old Wang, be ruthless." Understood. Wang Changyuan nodded and laughed sinisterly. Although his Sea of Qi had been destroyed, he still had his spirit. A wisp of spirit emerged and covered his palm, as if he was wearing a glove. He raised his hand and slapped the Black Shadow's face. Crack! The mask shattered on the spot. This slap contained all of Wang Chongyuan's strength and fury. How dare he sneak attack him? Wasn't this courting death? Not only was the mask shattered, but the black shadow was also sent flying. His teeth were shattered and mixed with blood. Half of his face was also lacerated. He was in a very sorry state. Vent your anger. Qin Feiyang looked at him with a smile and asked. Vent my anger. Wang Chongyuan nodded and smiled. Qin Feiyang said, then drag him over here. Okay. Wang Chongyuan nodded and walked over. He grabbed the black shadow's arm and dragged him in front of Qin Feiyang like a dead dog. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, raise your head and let me see. The black shadow lowered his head and turned a deaf ear. Damn it, don't you understand? Wang Chongyuan slapped him again. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Don't. How can I recognize him when he's beaten beyond recognition? Qin Feiyang quickly stopped him. Wang Chongyuan was stunned. He scratched his head and smiled. Young master, I'm sorry. I forgot about that. Following that, Wang Chongyuan raised his arm and grabbed the black shadow's neck, forcefully raising the black shadow's head. Because of Wang Chongyuan's 2 slaps, the left side of his face was badly mutilated, but the right side of his face was intact. However, Qin Feiyang, Madman, and White-Eyed Wolf all revealed looks of doubt. They had never seen this middle-aged face before. What was going on? But at the same time, Wang Chongyuan's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. You recognize him? Qin Feiyang and White-Eyed Wolf looked at Wang Chongyuan. Wang Chongyuan stared at the intact half of his face, pondered for a while, and suddenly slapped his head. He looked at the black shadow and sneered. So it's you? Who? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Wang Chongyuan looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Young master, don't you know? He is from your Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Rogue Cultivator Alliance? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He turned to look at White-Eyed Wolf and Madman, but the White-Eyed Wolf and Madman shook their heads, indicating that they had no impression of him. Wang Chongyuan said, It seems that you have indeed not seen him before. He is the son of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance's 10th elder. I have seen him once before, so I have some impression of him. 10th elder's son? Qin Feiyang and White-Eyed Wolf looked at each other. This was too much of a coincidence. They actually met this person? They had indeed not seen this person before. But he was not unfamiliar at all, because they had investigated this person's whereabouts before. Zhuo Tiansheng, Lu Zhenyuan, an elder you had investigated and found out that they had entered the Yin Devil Land many years ago. They originally thought that this person might have encountered a mishap, but who would have thought that not only was he alive and well, he had even broken through to the sovereign realm. Since he was the 10th elder's son, there was indeed a deep hatred between them. Madman shook his head and sneered. We didn't come to find you, but you took the initiative to find us. I really don't understand. How can there be such a foolish person? Isn't it good to be alive? But the 10th elder's son did not say a word. He stared at Qin Feiyang and White-Eyed Wolf, his eyes full of hatred. You were in the Yin Devil Land back then. You don't know the situation back then. This matter, the fault lies with your son Feng Wanjian, and your old man the 10th elder. We were only forced to retaliate. To be honest, they deserve to die. They do not deserve any sympathy. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Chapter 3365. Don't be complacent. You will die in the Yin Demon Land sooner or later. The middle-aged man's eyes were filled with hatred. We don't know if we will die, but you will definitely die. The madman laughed. The middle-aged man was not afraid of death. His half of his face was filled with a cold smile. There was a trace of mockery towards the madman. The madman raised his eyebrows. This person's gaze was really annoying. Whoosh. But at this time, accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, Pei Tianhong grabbed another black figure and landed beside Qin Feiyang like lightning. When the black figure saw the horsetail whisk, he immediately let out a cry of surprise. It was actually a woman's voice. Pei Tianhong waved his hand and threw the black figure at Qin Feiyang's feet. It seems to be someone from your Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Someone from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance again. Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the White-Eyed Wolf were stunned. Wang Changyuan was also stunned. He grabbed the black figure's chin and raised the black figure's head. A middle-aged woman's face immediately appeared. Who is it? Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf were suspicious. It was a face that they had never seen before. Wang Changyuan thought for a while and revealed a look of understanding. He raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang. He pointed at the middle-aged man and smiled. Young master, this is his woman. The two people and the wolf were stunned and immediately shook their heads and laughed. So it was Feng Wanyan and Feng Wanjian's mother. It had to be said that fate was really wonderful. I'm very curious. You and your wife returned to the eastern continent half a month ago. Even if the Blood Hall incident had not happened yet, you should have some understanding of our situation. So why did you come to ambush us? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. The Blood Hall was destroyed not long ago, so they were still planning half a month ago. However, he had the ancient castle in the slaughter zone. Basically everyone knew about it. Logically speaking, the existence of the ancient castle and the slaughter zone should be enough to deter this couple. So why did they still come to die? That's because we know that the slaughter domain requires a large amount of blood. You definitely won't open it easily. We also know that the castle is a sovereign divine weapon that you can't control. Moreover, your ancient castle is usually placed in the Black Tortoise world. Now that the Een Devil land is unable to enter the Black Tortoise world, even if you're in danger, the ancient castle won't be able to come out and save you. Therefore, even if Wang Changyuan and Pei Tianhong are here, as long as we are careful, we can definitely kill you. But I never expected that the Blood Hall's Dominator divine weapon would be in your hands. What happened these days? Why are Wang Changyuan and Pei Tianhong with you? Why isn't the sovereign weapon with Pei Tianhong? Why is it with you? The couple was puzzled. If it weren't for the Blood Hall's sovereign divine weapon, he would have been able to kill Qin Feiyang, Li Qia, and the white-eyed wolf. Because not long ago, the Blood Hall was eliminated by me. Pei Tianhong, Wang Changyuan, and the sovereign weapon have all submitted to me. Qin Feiyang said lightly. What? You've eliminated the Blood Hall? The couple looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. That's right. Qin Feiyang nodded and asked. One more question. When did you come to the Een Demon land after returning to the eastern continent? When we returned to the eastern continent and heard what happened to the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, we immediately returned to the Een Demon land after learning that Father, Yin and Jianer had died in your hands. Because we were afraid of exposing our whereabouts and being discovered by you. As for now, we originally wanted to return to the eastern continent to ask about you. But we didn't expect to encounter a 9th-level divine pillfire. We originally planned to wait for the two groups of people to mutually injure each other before coming out to reap the benefits. But we didn't expect you to come here as well. So what happened next happened. The middle-aged man smiled sinisterly. So that's how it is. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization and asked suspiciously. Then why did you return to the Een Demon land half a month ago? After all, with your cultivation, you could have lurked in the eastern continent and waited for an opportunity. This has nothing to do with you. The couple replied indifferently. The Een Demon land is so dangerous. You came out alive with great difficulty, but in the end, you returned to the Een Demon land. Why do I feel that the Een Demon land has become your shelter? And, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly as he asked, why do you know that I can't control the ancient castle? Don't tell me you ask because no one in the Sky Cloud realm knows about this except for Master and the others. You seem to know me very well. That's right. Frenzy and the white-eyed wolf slapped their heads and finally reacted. The fact that they couldn't control the ancient castle was a little secret in the Sky Cloud realm. More importantly, this couple had been in the Een Demon land all this time, so it was even more impossible for them to know. Something was strange. The people of the Sky Cloud realm don't know, but it doesn't mean that people in other places don't know. Qin Feiyang, do you really think you can kill us? I dared to let Madame restrain Pei Tianhong, so how could I not have a trump card in hand? The middle-aged man suddenly sneered, and a dazzling white divine light suddenly emerged from his forehead. At the same time, the middle-aged woman's forehead was the same as white divine light surged out. What's that? Qin Feiyang and the others suddenly had a trace of surprise in their eyes. Under the white divine light, there seemed to be a blood imprint. The next moment, under everyone's incredulous gazes, the two's crippled chi seas and injuries were instantly healed. Swish! Immediately after, the two suddenly jumped up, activated the supreme level auxiliary technique, and fled into the depths of the Een demon land like lightning. I didn't see wrong, it's indeed blood. So familiar, Frenzy frowned. The white-eyed wolf and Qin Feiyang were the same. Suddenly, the two men and one wolf's eyes trembled as they roared. It's a blood imprint. Qin Feiyang immediately shouted, Horsedale Whisk, Old Pei, we can't let them escape, we must keep them alive. Clang! The Horsedale Whisk shook, shattering the sky, and took the lead to disappear into the night sky. Pei Tianhong also activated momentary time, and chased after them like lightning. Young master, what kind of blood imprint made you so surprised? Wang Changyuan looked at Qin Feiyang, and the white-eyed wolf in surprise. Qin Feiyang said, when you first met the fire dragon, didn't you see a blood imprint on its forehead? Yes, it's a fiery red blood imprint. Wang Changyuan nodded. This blood imprint is not only fiery red, but also white, gold, and blood. The strongest is fiery red, followed by white, then gold and blood. Back then, when we were in the lower realms, we encountered these blood imprints. At that time, the 10 strongest guardians under the fire dragon had white blood imprints on their foreheads. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. Wang Changyuan was shocked when he heard this and asked, according to what you said, these two people are related to the fire dragon. Chapter 3366. It's definitely related. Because only the fire dragon has this type of blood word imprint in the sky cloud field. The fact that these two could enter the perfection sovereign realm so quickly, and even have a supreme level divine art and divine artifact, it must be related to the fire dragon. It's probably because it's related to the fire dragon that they know so much about me. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and looked at the black dagger in his hand, his eyes flashing. The black dagger was trembling. It was unknown whether it was from fear or excitement, because from the fluctuation of emotions emitted by the black dagger, Qin Feiyang and the others could clearly feel a desire. Follow me. I'll send you to the origin of the black tortoise field, Qin Feiyang said. Hearing this, the black dagger trembled even more. This time it could be clearly determined that it was excited. Boom! Not long after, a rumbling sound came from afar. It was obvious that Pei Tianhong and the Horsedale Whisk had caught up. Very quickly, boom! Another two loud and deafening sounds rang out, shocking everyone. Following closely, Qin Feiyang, the other two, and the white-eyed wolf felt a destructive aura rolling over. Could this be self-destruction? Wang Changyuan's expression changed. Now that they couldn't enter the black tortoise field, if the couple really self-destructed, they would all be finished. But very quickly, a monstrous divine aura exploded. This was the aura of the Horsedale Whisk. As soon as the divine aura of the Horsedale Whisk appeared, the destructive aura immediately dissipated into nothingness. Let's go take a look. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and led Wang Changyuan, the mad scientist, and the white-eyed wolf deeper into the field. But they didn't fly far before Pei Tianhong and the Horsedale Whisk met them. Where are they? Qin Feiyang frowned. Because he only saw Pei Tianhong and the Horsedale Whisk, he didn't see the couple. Pei Tianhong sighed. They were very decisive, seeing that their Qi was about to be destroyed. They directly chose to self-destruct. Sure enough, they self-destructed. Wang Changyuan muttered. Qin Feiyang, the lunatic, and the white-eyed wolf all had ugly expressions on their faces. That fire dragon had always been a great threat to them. Back in the Nether King's Hell's Forest of Gods and Devils, he had almost killed them. He had long wanted to settle these scores with the fire dragon. However, the fire dragon had the support of the ice dragon and the small beast. Even if they had the chance, they wouldn't be able to kill it. Fortunately, people don't live long, but disasters last for 1,000 years. This sentence was indeed true. A moment passed. Qin Feiyang let out a long sigh. He looked at the madman and the white-eyed wolf and said, "Don't worry. Since they have the blood word mark, There must be other creatures with it in this Inma land. Just be careful next time. I hope there are more. Madman and the white-eyed wolf nodded inside. The white-eyed wolf suddenly looked at Pei Tianhong and asked, "What about the pill fire?" Pei Tianhong waved his hand, and the black pill fire appeared. Without the isolation of the barrier, the quality of the pill fire could be identified immediately. It was indeed a rank 9 divine pill fire. Qin Feiyang took the pill fire and looked at it for a while. He smiled and said, "We got rid of 2 hidden dangers and got a rank 9 divine pill fire. It's a good start." Madman and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Pei Tianhong looked at the pill fire and then at Qin Feiyang. "Actually, a rank 9 divine pill fire is nothing to you right now." "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. The resources of the blood hall not only include a large amount of soul veins, crystal veins, herbs, pills, divine artifacts, and divine arts, but also many divine pill fires and pill furnaces. There are many of them of all grades. We even have a rank 10 divine pill fire and a rank 10 divine pill furnace, Pei Tianhong said. That's right. Qin Feiyang slapped his forehead. It seemed that he hadn't sorted out the resources of the blood hall. Thinking of this, he looked at Pei Tianhong and urged, "Go back the way you came and send these resources to the Black Tortoise world. Let the Fire Lotus help organize them." They hadn't gone deep into the Een Demon land yet. Even if they went back the way they came, it wouldn't take much time. The horsetail whisk entered Qin Feiyang's body. With a wave of his hand, Pei Tianhong took Qin Feiyang and the others with him and teleported away. At the same time, somewhere in the inner region of the Een Demon land, a fire dragon was lying on a mountain with its eyes closed. Its body was emitting a powerful aura, but suddenly, it opened its eyes, which were filled with shock. Why did the imprints of those 2 humans suddenly disappear? Could it be they've already met with misfortune? The fire dragon muttered as a cold light flashed in its eyes. With a wave of its claw, an image appeared in the void in front of it. The image showed the place where the couple had self-destructed. They actually self-destructed their bodies? The fire dragon's eyebrows raised. With the blood character imprint, the 2 of them could be said to be undying, invincible. But now they had self-detonated. There was only one reason for this, and that was that they had encountered a super expert who had mastered the most profound mysteries, or a sovereign weapon. This emperor wants to see who has the ability to force them to self-destruct. A vicious aura rose from the fire dragon's brows. It closed its eyes and extended its senses. It felt like Qin Feiyang was in the Black Tortoise world. It could see the situation of the Een Demon land through its senses. Very quickly, the fire dragon's senses stopped at a certain place. It saw 4 people and 1 wolf rushing outside at lightning speed. Qin Feiyang, Madman Wolf King. Immediately, when it opened its eyes, 2 beams of cold light shot out from them. The saying, "When enemies meet, their eyes turn red," was the most appropriate to describe the fire dragon at this moment. "I've finally waited for you guys to come. It seems that they died in your hands. However, what do you mean by this? Do you want to leave the Een Demon land? Since you have already seen the blood word imprint appear in the Een Demon land, then with your brains, you should be able to think that this emperor is definitely in the Een Demon land. Not coming to take revenge on me." The fire dragon raised its eyebrows. It didn't understand what Qin Feiyang and the others wanted to do. Suddenly, it rose into the air and shouted, "All generals quickly gather here." It was like a bell that resounded in all directions. Whoosh! Accompanied by the sound of air being torn apart, 100 figures flew out from all directions and landed in front of the fire dragon. A total of 100 people. There were men and women, old and young. Their cultivations were all at the Great Perfection Dominator realm. There was a faint white blood word imprint between their eyebrows. 100 people stood in front of the fire dragon, with incomparably respectful expressions. They bowed and said, "Greetings, Lord." The fire dragon nodded and pointed at Qin Feiyang, White-Eyed Wolf, and Frenzy in the image. He asked, "Do you see the 3 of them?" 100 people raised their heads and looked over. Then they nodded at the fire dragon. "Bring your subordinates to hunt them down and torture them." Let them experience the feeling of living a life worse than death. Finally, this emperor wants to see their corpses. The fire dragon snickered and said with a vicious aura between his brows. Yes. 100 people replied respectfully. Just as the group was about to turn and leave, the fire dragon suddenly looked at Wang Changyuan and exclaimed, "Wait a moment." 100 people stopped and turned to look at the fire dragon suspiciously. The fire dragon looked at Wang Changyuan and muttered, "Why does he look familiar?" Suddenly, it revealed a look of realization and chuckled. So it's that human who wanted to subdue this emperor and make this emperor his mount. This person, you guys give this emperor special care. Understood. 100 people nodded and turned around. Like ghosts, they quickly disappeared into the night. Hanging out with Qin Feiyang and the others, then I have no choice but to kill you. This is really fate. The fire dragon looked at Wang Changyuan, Qin Feiyang, White-Eyed Wolf, Frenzy, and Pei Tianhong in the image with a cold smile. As for the horsetail whisk, it didn't see it. Because before it could search, the horsetail whisk had already returned to Qin Feiyang's body. Chapter 3367. About an hour later, Qin Feiyang and the others finally left the Yin demon land. After Madman helped Qin Feiyang absorb the nefarious energy from the three people's bodies, Qin Feiyang entered the Black Tortoise world and handed the ancient pagoda that contained all the Blood Hall's resources and the black flame to Huolian. To be honest, if such a large amount of resources were given to Pai Lupi, Theta Wang, and the three Black Panther brothers, Qin Feiyang was worried that they wouldn't be able to handle it. After all, whether it was experience or judgment, they weren't as good as Fire Lotus. After all, Fire Lotus used to be the palace master of Nine Heaven Palace. Whether it was ability or other things, they were naturally above Pai Lupi and the others. Of course, to organize this amount of resources, even for Fire Lotus, it wasn't easy. They would definitely need the help of Pai Lupi and the others. But this matter, Fire Lotus and the others would handle it themselves, so he didn't need to worry too much. After saying a few words, Qin Feiyang left the Black Tortoise world. Wang Changyuan's Qi had already been repaired, so it was still Wang Changyuan who led the way. As for Pei Tianhong, he was stronger than Wang Changyuan, so he was the main force when facing danger, so he had to be in good condition at all times. Half an hour later, they returned to the place where they fought and didn't stop, continuing to head deeper. Currently they were still at the edge. Periphery, edge, middle, inner core. In other words, if they wanted to enter the core area, they still had to pass through the middle and inner areas. But according to Wang Changyuan, even if they didn't stop and rest, it would still take them half a month to reach the edge. Without the help of the madman and the white-eyed wolf to absorb the evil power, it would take them at least a month. And this was under the condition that there wasn't any danger on the way. If they fought with the beasts, it would take even longer. This also proved the importance of the madman and the white-eyed wolf in the Yin demon land. The Yin demon power was dealt with by the madman and the white-eyed wolf. The beasts or people with bad consciences were deterred by Wang Changyuan and Pei Tianhong, these two super experts. Pei Tianhong was also the one who acted when they encountered the divine item. Therefore, Qin Feiyang was very relaxed and did not need to do anything. Along the way, everything was smooth sailing. This was because no one and no ferocious beast dared to challenge the authority of Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed. On this day, the group stopped at the top of a mountain and raised their heads to look ahead. The land ahead was still filled with undulating mountains and ferocious beasts. But there was no need for that. Patches of dark gray mist could be seen in the void. This was the power of the Yin Devil. At this moment, the mountain they were on was the boundary between the border region and the central region. In other words, the Yin Mo power in the central region was so thick that it had materialized. Back then, I met the fire dragon in the center of the central region. Wang Changyuan said in a deep voice. How far is it from here? Qin Feiyang asked. Not far, about half a month's journey. Wang Changyuan shook his head. Half a month's journey isn't too far. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Of course not. because the central region is larger, almost twice the size of the border region. So to cross the central region and reach the inner region, it will take at least a month without stopping. Wang Changyuan said. The central region is so big? Qin Feiyang was speechless. Generally speaking, the border region was the largest. The central, inner, and core regions would get smaller and smaller. However, the Yin Devil Land was the complete opposite. It was big inside and small outside. If the central region took a month, wouldn't the inner and core regions take even longer? Wang Changyuan shook his head. We have never really set foot in the inner and core regions, so no one in the Sky Cloud realm knows how big it is. That's right. Not long ago, I told you that even I only dare to stroll around the entrance of the inner region. Pei Tianhong also nodded in agreement. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and smiled. Then let's continue. With the mad scientist and the white-eyed wolf, they didn't have to worry about the threat of the Yin Devil power, as long as they didn't split up. Mad scientist, the Yin Devil power here is at least 5 times that of the border region. You must remember to help us absorb some Yin Devil power every once in a while. Wang Changyuan looked at the mad scientist with a pleading expression. Don't worry. I don't need you to remind me. The mad scientist waved his hand. As long as you have a sense of propriety, Wang Changyuan muttered and led the 3 people and 1 wolf into the central region. Look, someone entered the central region. Around them, there were many people hiding in the mountains, refining the Yin Devil power. When they saw Qin Feiyang's group, they were shocked. They had just arrived in the central region and didn't refine the Yin Devil power in their body to adjust their state before charging in. These people were too bold. Wait, those 2 young men look familiar? Where have I seen them before? Yes, it's them, Qin Feiyang and the mad scientist. They actually came to the Yin Devil Land too. Many people expressed their shock. Wait a minute, who are Qin Feiyang and the mad scientist? Are they amazing? Why haven't I heard of these 2 names before? Some people were confused. Even Qin Feiyang and the mad scientist don't know. Brother, how long has it been since you returned to the Eastern continent? It hasn't been long, probably 2 or 3,000 years. 2 or 3,000 years. No wonder. Let me tell you, Qin Feiyang and the mad scientist are the rising stars of our Eastern continent. Rising stars? What's so great about that? The Sky Cloud realm is full of outstanding people. There are rising stars everywhere. You guys are making a fuss over nothing. Some people expressed their disdain. Not to mention the Sky Cloud realm, just the Eastern continent. There were many rising stars. What was so rare about that? What? We're making a fuss over nothing. Brother, you are a typical example of fearless ignorance. If you want to treat them as ordinary rising stars, then you are gravely mistaken. Let me tell you, not only are the 2 of them talented and have comprehended the strongest law, but they also have sovereign divine weapons. You know, the deputy leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and the Hall of Famers, right? They are the masters of Qin Feiyang and the mad scientist. You know Elder Hua of the Demon Palace, right? He takes good care of Qin Feiyang. And now, I heard that they are the personal disciples of the Demon Palace. Because of the 2 of them, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and the Demon Palace have temporarily stopped fighting. Can you imagine their weight in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and the Demon Palace? Those who didn't know what was going on were all shocked. Sovereign divine weapons, strongest law, and they were related to the Demon Palace and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance? They really couldn't be described as ordinary rising stars. Surprised, right? What is this? Let me tell you something. It's said that the 2 of them managed to suppress 2 of the Blood Hall's early-stage sovereigns during the exchange in the Heavenly Cloud Ocean. In the end, they directly challenged the Blood Hall and challenged over 100 core disciples of the Blood Hall. You didn't hear wrong. It is the 2 of them. They asked over 100 core disciples of the Blood Hall to fight together, but no one from the Blood Hall dared to accept the challenge. You should be able to imagine how strong the 2 of them are now. In short, the other monstrous geniuses of the Sky Cloud realm are not worth mentioning in front of them. Everyone was discussing. However, Qin Feiyang and the others didn't know any of this. They directly rushed to the center of the central region. Along the way, they encountered countless ferocious beasts, but none of them dared to block their path. Pei Tianhong alone was enough to make them stop. Of course, they also encountered other humans. Some were looking for treasures, some were fighting, and some even asked Qin Feiyang and the others for help. However, Qin Feiyang and the others ignored them. Since they dared to step into the Yin Devil land and the central region, they should be prepared to die. In the blink of an eye, another 5 days passed. Rumble. Clang. When Qin Feiyang and the others passed by a river, they encountered the most tragic battle. On one side, there were more than 20 humans, and on the other side, there were more than 20 ferocious beasts. All of them were at the perfection sovereign realm. They fought until the sky turned dark and blood dyed the sky. Among them, there were a few who actually recognized Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan. However, Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan were very unfamiliar with these people. After all, their status was different. Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan were once the leaders of the Blood Hall. Naturally, there were many people who recognized them. However, to put it bluntly, these people were just lowly ants to them. Therefore, it was impossible for a powerhouse like Pei Tianhong to know everyone. Those people also asked Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan for help. In order to get closer, they even took the initiative to reveal their origins. They all came from the Western continent. However, it was useless. With Pei Tianhong's personality, he didn't even want to pay attention to these people, let alone help them. In the end, more than 20 people were completely wiped out, because as the battle dragged on, more and more ferocious beasts were attracted. Moreover, the ferocious beasts in the central region were all born in the Yin Devil land. In other words, they were natives and could absorb the power of the Yin Devil. However, these humans couldn't. On one hand, they had to fight the ferocious beasts. On the other hand, they had to deal with the Yin Devil power. Therefore, their deaths were something that would happen sooner or later. Even if they didn't die under the claws of the ferocious beasts, after a long time, they wouldn't have the chance to refine the Yin Devil power in their bodies. They would also be killed by the Yin Devil power. This was the terror of the Yin Devil land. Although Qin Feiyang and the others were having a smooth time, that was because of the mad scientist and the white-eyed wolf. As for the other humans and ferocious beasts outside, they didn't have the ability to absorb the Yin Devil power. Therefore, they couldn't move an inch. Roar. After the group of ferocious beasts dealt with the 20 people, they turned their gazes towards Qin Feiyang's group and bared their fangs. However, after Wang Changyuan revealed his ultimate skill, the group of ferocious beasts tactfully turned around and left with their tails between their legs. Continue. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and Wang Changyuan brought the others forward as fast as lightning. The inner region. On a certain mountain peak, the fire dragon lay on the mountain peak and looked at the scene in front of him. He chuckled, as expected of the mad scientist and the Wolf King. You aren't even afraid of the Yin Devil power. However, your choice is wrong. If I were you, I would leave the Yin Devil land and never return. You want to come at me? Good. Let's settle our past grudges in the Yin Devil land. Ever since it discovered the whereabouts of Qin Feiyang's group, it had been monitoring them. The hatred and killing intent in its eyes had never disappeared. Chapter 3368. Time passed. Another 5 days had passed. There were only 5 days left until they reached the center. On this day, the madman revealed a look of joy. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf immediately noticed and looked at him suspiciously. See for yourself. The madman opened his palm, and a blood-red flame rose up. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf were stunned. They carefully looked at it and found that the aura of the blood-red flame was the same as the new power that was born in the madman's body. Could this be? They were shocked. That's right. Ever since we entered the Yin Demon land, the Yin Demon power and the evil power have been fusing. This new power is constantly being born. Right now, a third of the God power in my body has already turned into this new power. The madman said. A third? Then wouldn't it not be long before all of your God power turn into this power? Qin Feiyang was shocked. The madman nodded. With a wave of his hand, the blood-red flame in his hand rose into the air and turned into a large barrier that covered everyone. Immediately, a shocking scene appeared. The demonic power, which could corrode divine power, soul, and even power of laws, was immediately blocked outside the barrier. This, not only Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf, but even Wang Changyuan and Pei Tianhong were dumbfounded. What was this new power? It could actually block the corrosion of the demon power. There's no need to be so surprised. After all, this power is a fusion of the evil power and the demon power. It should be able to block the corrosion of the demon power. And judging from the current situation, this new power is equivalent to the advanced version of the evil power and the demon power. I'm going to name it Blood Demon Power. What do you think? The madman looked at the three people and one wolf and laughed. Blood Demon Power? Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf were stunned. Blood Demon Race, Blood Demon Tower, Blood Demon Power. The name was very fitting. But what kind of power was this? The Blood Demon Tower was the divine weapon of the first patriarch of the Blood Demon race. It was in the hands of the old patriarch, the Ghost King's father. But in the end, the Blood Demon Tower chose to betray the old patriarch and ran with the madman. The reason why they suspected that the madman was a reincarnation. Otherwise, how could they solve this problem? Combined with the evil moon and evil sun in hell, as well as the scene he saw when he touched the evil moon, could it be that the lunatic was the reincarnation of the first patriarch of the Blood Demon race? If that was the case, coupled with the fact that the Blood Demon Tower was a sovereign divine weapon, the Blood Demon tribe should not be a simple tribe. Perhaps the Blood Demon force that the lunatic had casually named actually existed. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The madman rolled his eyes and nodded. Anyway, I think it's good. I'll call it Blood Demon Power from now on. With a wave of his hand, the Blood Demon Power dissipated, and the demon power shrouded them again. Why did you put it away? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. It was good to have a barrier. He didn't need to trouble the madman and the white-eyed wolf to absorb it. No hurry. I still need to absorb more demon power and try to evolve all the divine power into Blood Demon Power as soon as possible. The madman waved his hand. As his voice fell, he began to actively absorb the evil power. The evil power from all directions suddenly turned into waves and surged toward them. The density and concentration suddenly soared countless times. The white-eyed wolf absorbed it casually. Although it couldn't be transformed into Blood Demon Power, it still became a part of his divine power. However, Qin Feiyang, Wang Changyuan and Pei Tianhong couldn't bear it. Stop. It's fine if you want to transform into divine power first. Make a barrier for us, and we'll sit inside and wait for you. Qin Feiyang hurriedly said. The demon power was everywhere. The madman absorbed all the demon power around him. Qin Feiyang and the others standing on the side were naturally drowned by the demon power. It surpassed the original density, and they wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Okay then. You guys sit here and drink tea and chat. The madman waved his hand and set up a 10-meter-wide barrier. After absorbing all of the demonic power, he walked out of the barrier and sat on the ground. He began to absorb without restraint. I'm so envious. Wang Changyuan shook his head and smiled bitterly. When others saw the demon power, they wouldn't even be able to avoid it. But this person was drinking it like it was water. They're all monsters anyway, Pei Tianhong suddenly muttered. Monsters? Wang Changyuan paused. He really couldn't find anything to complain about. Let's wait. We're not in a rush anyway. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and a tea table and 4 chairs appeared. He then took out a tea set and tea leaves. He looked at the white-eyed wolf and smiled. White-eyed wolf, go get some water. Making tea naturally required water. If they could enter the black tortoise world, getting water was just a matter of thought. But now, they could only find water in the demon land. But luckily, the demon land didn't lack water. Why don't you go? The white-eyed wolf raised his brow. If I could absorb the demon power, would I need to trouble you? Qin Feiyang was speechless. Not going. Drinking tea is boring. Let's drink. The white-eyed wolf took out 4 jars of black tortoise divine wine from his yin and yang ring. You're carrying it with you. Qin Feiyang was shocked. Of course. Such good divine wine. If you don't carry some with you, what if you're thirsty and want to drink? The white-eyed wolf grinned, and threw 1 jar to Wang Changyuan and Pei Tianhong. He opened 1 jar, and threw the other into Qin Feiyang. He said lightly, "Getting water is impossible. Drink it or not." Then, he held the jar and drank a mouthful. His face slowly showed an intoxicated expression. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. He put away the tea set and tea leaves and opened the altar. A divine dragon made of wine rushed out. Wang Changyuan and Pei Tianhong looked at each other. It was divine wine. So they also opened their jars. The rich wine aroma immediately flooded the barrier. Damn, what's going on? The nearby beasts noticed the commotion and ran over to take a look. They were stunned. When other humans came to the Yin demon land, they only thought about how to survive. But these people were sitting there and drinking wine leisurely, looking at the lunatic who was absorbing the Yin demon power. The beasts were stunned. What kind of monster was this? He could even absorb the Yin demon power? Terrifying. Time flew. Half a day passed. The Yin demon power here was as thick as fog. Even Qin Feiyang and the others could only see a few meters away. If they looked from above the Yin demon land, it would be even more shocking. At this moment, the Yin demon power in the central area was surging toward Qin Feiyang and the others. It's really good wine. Pei Tianhong smacked his lips. After drinking the divine wine, the aftertaste was endless. But when he raised his head to look at the Yin demon power outside the barrier, his mouth twitched. He said helplessly, "The Yin demon power here is definitely comparable to the exit of the inner area. Then I'll go out and see how scary it is." Qin Feiyang stood up and took a step out of the barrier. The frightening power of the Yin devil immediately rushed into his body like a tide. His sea of consciousness was instantly submerged by the power of the Yin devil. His divine soul was facing a fatal danger. He quickly returned to the barrier and shouted at the white-eyed wolf. "Quick! Overestimating yourself." The white-eyed wolf pouted. It stepped forward and pressed its claws on Qin Feiyang's body. The Yin demon power in Qin Feiyang's body immediately rushed into the white-eyed wolf's body. The Yin demon power that entered the white-eyed wolf's body didn't cause any negative effects to the white-eyed wolf. Wang Changyuan and Pei Tianhong looked at it with envy. So close. Only when the last trace of Yin demon power disappeared did Qin Feiyang let out a long breath. He returned to the chair and looked at the Yin demon power outside with fear in his eyes. With his current cultivation, he could only last 5 breaths. Once 5 breaths were up, he would definitely die. It was estimated that even a perfect sovereign would only be able to last for about 30 breaths of time. Pei Tianhong had said before that the Yin demon power here was similar to the Yin demon power at the entrance of the inner area. If the Yin demon power at the entrance was already at this level, then how terrifying would the Yin demon power in the inner area be? Don't forget that there was still the core area. The Yin demon power in the core area probably wouldn't even dare to come in contact with it. This also meant that when the time came, they could only stay in Madman's barrier. Even Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan were the same. If that was the case, they would be restricted if they met Elder Hua, or a strong enemy. Qin Feiyang looked at the white-eyed wolf and asked, "Is there any way for us to move alone without being threatened by the Yin demon power?" "No. You can only stay in the barrier formed by the blood demon power." "That's right. Don't you have the slaughter domain?" "The slaughter domain is so powerful. What are you afraid of?" The white-eyed wolf looked at Qin Feiyang with ridicule in its eyes. The meaning behind its words was obvious. So what if the slaughter domain was powerful? Could it block the Yin demon power? Slaughter domain. The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener understood. Qin Feiyang's expression froze for a moment. Could the slaughter domain block the Yin devil's power? When he faced the evil power in the Nether King Hell, he didn't try it. Because in the Nether King Hell, he couldn't use any heaven-defying techniques or artifacts. Otherwise, the power of laws would descend and he would be killed. He felt that he could try it. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and pondered. Just like what the white-eyed wolf said, The slaughter domain was so powerful, and even had its own domain. Perhaps it could isolate the demon power? Thinking up to here, he suddenly stood up and looked at the demon power outside the barrier. Let's try it. It wasn't like I would lose anything. Chapter 3369. You really want to try? The white-eyed wolf looked at Qin Feiyang in astonishment. He only drank a few mouthfuls. How did he become so drunk? Thinking about it, it was obvious that this was impossible. The slaughter domain was indeed powerful and invincible, but it was completely different from the Devil's power. Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan also raised their heads and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Phew! Qin Feiyang exhaled a long breath and walked out of the barrier with anticipation. The Devil's power rushed over again. Qin Feiyang decisively opened the slaughter domain, but did not absorb the blood. Firstly, there was not much blood left in the Black Tortoise World's blood sea for him to absorb. Secondly, if it was useful, opening the slaughter domain would have an effect. If it was useless, there was no point in absorbing the blood. Not to mention, he couldn't even connect to the Black Tortoise World, so there was no way to absorb the blood. Naive. The white-eyed wolf shook its head and did not look anymore. It grabbed the wine jug and gulped it down. It was certain that the slaughter domain could not be done, but it did not notice the expressions on Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan's faces. Their faces were filled with shock. Looking at Qin Feiyang again, he was standing in the slaughter domain, looking at the devil energy in the slaughter domain. His expression was somewhat dazed. The devil's power in the slaughter domain was rushing towards the blood-red longsword in his hand. Although the power of the blood-red longsword did not increase, the devil's power in the slaughter domain was increasing. What did this mean? It meant that the blood-red longsword, after opening the slaughter domain, could also absorb the devil's power. All of a sudden, he quivered and regained his senses. Looking around the slaughter domain, he was overjoyed. The nefarious devil's power lingered outside the slaughter domain, but it could not penetrate in. The devil's power that the blood-red longsword absorbed was left behind when the slaughter domain was opened. When the devil's power was absorbed by the blood-red longsword, there was no more devil's power in the slaughter domain. Even the devil's power in Qin Feiyang's body was completely absorbed by the blood-red longsword. It can be blocked outside. Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. He knew that the slaughter domain would never disappoint. What expression? The white-eyed wolf finally noticed Pei Tianhong and Qin Feiyang's expressions. He turned his head suspiciously. When he saw Qin Feiyang standing in the slaughter domain, the demon's power was blocked outside the slaughter domain, and he was stunned. What the hell? It was really possible. He must be dreaming. It rubbed its eyes in disbelief and looked at Qin Feiyang again. It suddenly felt that God was unfair. It had finally found a sense of superiority in front of Qin Feiyang, but it was beaten back to its original state in an instant. What a bitter life! Who was the monster here? But that's not right. Back in the underworld king's hell, even the slaughter domain couldn't stop the evil power, not to mention the devil power, that was even more powerful than the evil power. Wait a minute. It seemed that in the Nether King Hell, Qin Feiyang had never opened the slaughter domain. This was because the Nether King Hell did not allow one to open a heaven-defying divine artifact or heaven-defying divine art. No, he had opened it, but it wasn't the slaughter domain but the kill word technique. In the ancient city, the ice dragon brought the dragon's princess and descended. At that time, Qin Feiyang was furious and activated the kill word technique. Kill word technique slaughter domain, from start to finish, these were two different levels. Damn. What the hell? Maniac felt the aura of the slaughter domain and opened his eyes. He looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. He knew that the slaughter domain was heaven-defying, but shouldn't there be a limit? It was okay that it was so strong, but it could actually block the devil power. This bastard really made people jealous and envious. A short while later, Qin Feiyang calmed down and muttered, "Let's see if we can use the devil power to stack the strength of the slaughter domain." Although he had absorbed some devil power, and the blood-colored sword didn't change at all, the amount was too little. If he absorbed more, maybe there would be some effect. Immediately, the scarlet sword flew out of Qin Feiyang's hand and floated above the slaughter domain. With a thought from Qin Feiyang, the Yin demon energy in the surroundings immediately surged towards the scarlet sword. Old Qin, what are you doing? Maniac looked at Qin Feiyang in annoyance. This was because the speed at which the blood-colored sword absorbed the Yin devil power was several times faster than him. Even the Yin devil power on his side surged towards the blood-colored sword. Don't worry, I'm just trying. Qin Feiyang gritted his teeth. Time passed bit by bit. Around 100 breaths later, who knew how much Yin devil power had surged into the blood-colored sword? However, the strength of the blood-colored sword didn't increase at all. This meant that although the blood-colored sword could absorb the Yin devil power, it still needed to absorb fresh blood to increase its strength. However, for Qin Feiyang, he was already satisfied as long as he could absorb the Yin devil power. At that time, even if he faced danger and had to separate from Maniac and the white-eyed wolf, he could still protect himself. Shua. Qin Feiyang entered the barrier. With a thought, the slaughter domain closed and the blood-colored sword also disappeared. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced right now. The white-eyed wolf stared angrily at Qin Feiyang. Are you blaming me? Qin Feiyang shrugged his shoulders and returned to the lounge chair. He was in a good mood and drank a few more mouthfuls. The white-eyed wolf pursed his lips. However, he suddenly rolled his eyes and snickered. So what if the slaughter domain can absorb the Yin devil power? Don't forget that your slaughter domain can only be opened once a day for an hour each time. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He stared angrily at the white-eyed wolf and said, Do you have to feel superior for me? I'm happy. The white-eyed wolf grinned, extremely pleased with himself. Qin Feiyang directly ignored him. Did he need the white-eyed wolf to remind him of this? He had already thought of it. He did not plan to rely on the slaughter domain to do anything in the Yin devil land. He would be satisfied if he could temporarily protect himself. In short, in this kind of place, he still had to rely on the white-eyed wolf and madman. No, in the border area and the central area, he could still rely on the white-eyed wolf. Because the density of the Yin demon power in these two areas wasn't very high. If they couldn't handle it, they could let the white-eyed wolf absorb it. But in the inner area, although the white-eyed wolf could also help absorb it, because the density were too strong, his absorption speed could not compare to the speed of the Yin devil power entering his body. So once he entered the inner area, the white-eyed wolf did not care. But he could not help others. Madman was different. He could use the blood demon power to form a barrier and isolate the Yin devil power. So the most important thing was to rely on Madman. This was also the reason why Qin Feiyang was willing to sit here and wait. Because when Madman's divine power completely evolved into the blood demon power, then when he entered the inner area, the core area, it would be more secure. What's going on? The Yin devil power seems to be flowing in that direction. I've come to the central area so many times, but this is the first time I've seen such a phenomenon. Nearby, other than the beasts, there were also some humans looking for opportunities. When they felt the Yin devil land gradually become thinner, they were all shocked. Looking at the Yin demon power all surging towards one direction, he was even more shocked. Should we go and take a look? Maybe some treasure has appeared. Makes sense. A phenomenon like this, there is a 90% chance that it is because a peerless treasure has appeared. All of them were filled with curiosity and greed as they ran towards Qin Feiyang. But in the end, apart from the beasts that grew in the Yin devil land, no human could get close. Because these beasts could absorb the Yin devil power, no matter how dense it was, they were not afraid. But those humans were different. Because of Madman, the Yin devil power became thinner where they were originally, but as they got closer to Madman, the Yin devil power naturally became more terrifying. Not to mention staying by Madman's side like Qin Feiyang and the others. Even if they had great abilities, they could not do it. So they could only stand outside the area that they could still bear and look from afar. Although they were unwilling, they could only do this for now and hope that the Yin devil power in front of them would dissipate quickly. At the same time, At this moment, a huge group of people and countless ferocious beasts were rushing over from the depths of the central region. Walking at the back were the 100 generals under the fire dragon. Except for the blood-word mark between their eyebrows, which was white, the other humans and beasts were mostly blood and gold, densely packed. Everywhere they went, no matter if it was the beasts in the Devil land or the humans adventuring in the central area, they all hurriedly hid and were terrified, because those who did not hide were all killed by those people and beasts. Who are these people? What beasts? Why have I never seen them before? And the mark between their eyebrows, what does that mean? Before the fire dragon came to the Devil land, the blood-word mark did not exist. Also, all the people and beasts that followed the fire dragon were all in the inner area, so everyone was unfamiliar with this mark. Even the beasts that lived in the Devil land were seeing it for the first time. But Qin Feiyang and the others did not know any of this. Madman closed his eyes and crazily absorbed the Devil power. The divine power in his body was rapidly evolving. Qin Feiyang, Pei Tianhong, Wang Changyuan, and the white-eyed wolf were sitting inside the barrier, drinking and chatting. Of course, Qin Feiyang would not miss such a good opportunity, and humbly asked Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan for advice. After all, the two of them were people who grasped the ultimate profoundness. Their knowledge and understanding of the law's profoundness naturally far surpassed his. Needless to say, when faced with Qin Feiyang's request, Wang Changyuan would tell him everything he knew. As for Pei Tianhong, even though he was not willing, he still patiently explained everything to Qin Feiyang. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Qin Feiyang's harvest was not small. Although there was no progress in the karma law, slaughter law, and lightning law's ultimate profoundness, he felt that he was about to break through the bottleneck of the war law, strength law, and wind law. As long as he went into seclusion, he should be able to comprehend the fourth profoundness. It was also on the morning of the same day. Rumble. A series of loud noises came from the depths. It was as if a beast tide was descending. The earth violently shook and terrifying auras roared in all directions. Even the void was twisting. Qin Feiyang's group and the white-eyed wolf were shocked. They immediately looked up, but because the Devil power was too dense, they could not see the scene in the distance. Chapter 3370. What's going on? Frenzy also stood up and opened his eyes. He looked into the distance, and his face was filled with shock. As for the divine power in his body, half of it had already evolved into the power of the blood demon. The efficiency of crazy absorption was indeed different. This doesn't seem good, the white-eyed wolf muttered as it stepped out of the barrier. It opened its bloody mouth and swallowed all the demon power that had gathered here. Their vision was no longer obstructed by the demon power, and became wide open. At this time, the sky was already bright. Although the demon land was very dark during the day, it didn't affect their vision much. At the same time, the people gathered in the distance finally saw Qin Feiyang and the others. It's them. I thought there was some treasure. So it's the frenzy and the Wolf King absorbing the demon power. Wait, they can actually absorb the demon power? It can't be. When they realized this point, they were all dumbfounded and filled with disbelief. Qin Feiyang and the others naturally noticed these people, but they didn't pay attention to them. Their eyes were locked on the front. They were too far away, and couldn't see what was going on. What was the reason for this? However, hearing this huge momentum, they felt that something was wrong. It can't be a beast tide, right? The frenzy and the white-eyed wolf entered the barrier with a look of shock. No matter what, it's never wrong to be careful, Qin Feiyang said. Actually, he wasn't very nervous. After all, with the horsetail whisk as a sovereign divine weapon, even if a beast tide really came, it didn't matter. But the people behind them, who were watching the show, didn't leave. Were they waiting for death? Time passed by breath by breath. About 100 breaths passed. Finally, a group of beasts entered their sight. It really is a beast tide. The frenzy raised his eyebrows. At a glance, there seemed to be no end to it. It was unknown how many ferocious beasts were charging over in a fan-shaped formation. Beast tide? Isn't that Big Brother's dish? With a beast god like Big Brother here, they all have to obediently lie down and sing conquer. The white-eyed wolf laughed. Something's wrong. Before the white-eyed wolf could finish his words, Qin Feiyang's pupil shrank, and he quickly swept his gaze across the room. Even the weakest of these ferocious beasts were perfect sovereigns, and at least half of them were perfect sovereigns. It was like a huge python that was hundreds of meters long, or a huge black eagle in short. Basically, all the ferocious beasts they knew were here. However, this was not the main point. The main point was that between their eyebrows, there was a faintly discernible blood character imprint. There's a blood imprint. Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan also noticed this. The mad scientist and the white-eyed wolf were stunned. They looked carefully and indeed there was one. As far as the eye could see, there were at least 1,000 ferocious beasts. The blood character mark on their foreheads was the color of blood. This isn't a coincidence. They're coming for us. The mastermind is the fire dragon. Qin Feiyang raised his head and scanned the sky. Could it be that the fire dragon was hiding nearby? You're still as smart as ever. You've already discovered that I'm the mastermind behind all of this. In the inner region, the fire dragon looked at Qin Feiyang in the image with a cold smile in his eyes. However, so what if he discovered it? This time, not only you Qin Feiyang, the mad scientist, and the white-eyed wolf would all die in the Een Devil land. Even if the gods descended, they wouldn't be able to help you. Qin Feiyang searched for a while, but there was no trace of the fire dragon at all. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and transmit his voice. Pei Tianhong, release your divine sense, and see if there's any trace of the fire dragon nearby. All right. Pei Tianhong nodded. His divine sense surged out in all directions. At that moment, he frowned. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang asked. Pei Tianhong said. I didn't find the fire dragon, but behind the beast tide, I saw a lot of humans. There are still humans? Qin Feiyang was surprised. That's right. Almost all of them are great perfection dominators. And there's a blood mark between their eyebrows. Some are blood red, some are gold, and some are white. Pei Tianhong's expression was somewhat ugly. There were too many of them. With his and Wang Changyuan's strength, they might not be able to kill their way out. Because these beasts and humans were different from the beasts and humans outside. If it was the beasts and humans outside, even if they couldn't wipe out the entire place, it would still be very easy for them to kill their way out. But these beasts and humans all had blood word imprints. Not only could this blood word imprint increase their combat strength, it could also allow them to have an immortal body. This was very difficult to deal with. Wang Changyuan suddenly looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Young master. Shoo. Qin Feiyang immediately made a shushing gesture. What's wrong? Wang Changyuan was slightly stunned and looked at it in confusion. I'm guessing that even if the fire dragon isn't hiding nearby, he must be watching us from somewhere. So, our next conversation will be through sound transmission. Qin Feiyang thought to himself. Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan heard this, and their pupils shrank. Although he didn't know how strong the fire dragon was, the thought of being spied on the entire time made him feel very uncomfortable. What do you want to say? Qin Feiyang looked at Wang Changyuan suspiciously. I remember you said that for the blood word imprint, blood red is the lowest and fire red is the highest, right? Wang Changyuan said. That's right. Qin Feiyang nodded. Wang Changyuan looked at Pei Tianhong and asked secretly. Then, did you see any humans or beasts with the fire red blood word imprint? Nope. Pei Tianhong shook his head. Just as Pei Tianhong finished speaking, Qin Feiyang also said secretly. Other humans and beasts wouldn't have the fire red blood word imprint. Why? Wang Changyuan and Pei Tianhong looked at him suspiciously. Because only the fire dragon has the fire red blood word imprint. If I'm not wrong, the blood word imprint must be the work of the ice dragon or small beast. In other words, the reason why the fire dragon is so strong is purely because of the ice dragon or small beast's power. As for the white, gold, and blood red blood word imprint, these were all created by the fire dragon. According to my personal guess, This blood word imprint should be a control-type secret technique. In other words, the beasts and humans that are charging at us are all controlled by the fire dragon. Qin Feiyang thought to himself. So it's related to the ice dragon and the others. Seems like we have to be more careful. Young master, take out the sovereign divine weapon and kill them all. Pei Tianhong's eyes flashed with killing intent. Anything related to the ice dragon and the others couldn't be taken lightly, so it was best to take out the sovereign divine weapon. Qin Feiyang nodded, but suddenly, he frowned, looked around and said, "Don't take out the sovereign divine weapon for now." Why? Pei Tianhong was suspicious. The fire dragon sent its minions to kill us, so it definitely doesn't know that I have a sovereign divine weapon with me. So I'm going to give it a surprise when we find it. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with killing intent. That makes sense. If it knew, it definitely wouldn't send these beasts and humans to their deaths. Frenzy nodded. That's right. If it knows that we have a sovereign divine weapon with us, it will definitely hide it. Finding it then would be like finding a needle in a haystack. The white-eyed wolf also agreed. Hearing this, Pei Tianhong raised his eyebrows. Although that was the case, facing so many beasts and humans would be a tough battle. Originally, there were 6,000 dark guards in the Black Tortoise world. If they could come out to help, it wouldn't be too much of a problem. But now these 6,000 dark guards couldn't come out. Qin Feiyang, Frenzy, and the white-eyed wolf, although their strength wasn't bad, facing so many beasts and humans, they wouldn't be of much use. So now, only he and Wang Changyuan could fight. The two of them, facing so many beasts and humans, even if they had heaven-defying abilities, it would be difficult to deal with them. With the slave seal, Qin Feiyang naturally knew what Pei Tianhong was thinking. He smiled faintly. Don't fight with them. Just kill your way out. In the inner area, if there's a chance. At this point, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. What's wrong? Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan looked at him suspiciously. Find a weaker beast. I want to read its memory. They are the fire dragon's subordinates. They definitely know where the fire dragon is hiding. Qin Feiyang transmitted. However, he also knew that it would be very difficult, because the beasts he saw now were at the peak dominator rank, and he was just a small stage dominator. A small stage dominator, using puppet techniques to control a peak dominator, was simply courting death. Most importantly, these beasts were controlled by the fire dragon. They definitely wouldn't be willing to be controlled by him. Furthermore, the fire dragon definitely wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. In short, it was very troublesome. However, opportunities were created. Slowly, there was no rush. Roar! Groups of beasts roared as they charged over. Everywhere they went, mountains crumbled. It was like the end of the world. The people hiding at the back finally reacted. They immediately turned and fled. They didn't know that these beasts were coming for Qin Feiyang's group. They thought that a beast tide was really coming and panicked. Let's go! Qin Feiyang shouted. Frenzy waved his hand, and the barrier instantly dissipated. There was no need to hide inside the barrier. Immediately after, Pei Tianhong swept up Qin Feiyang's group, and used instant time to arrive at the center of the beast tide. Damn! They actually want to barge in. Those people who were fleeing turned back, and were instantly alarmed. Indeed, those who were skilled were bold. With Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan, these two super experts, they had the capital to act so arrogantly. Eye of lightning, world-extinguishing lightning. At the same time, Wang Changyuan activated the law of lightning's highest profundity. Streaks of world-extinguishing lightning appeared, carrying a destructive aura, as they blasted into the beast tide. Roar! Accompanied by wails, a large group of beasts died on the spot. Blood dyed the void and earth. However, those that died were mostly peak dominator rank beasts. Peak dominator rank beasts relied on the power of the blood imprint to forcefully block the world-extinguishing lightning. Although they were heavily injured, their injuries recovered in the blink of an eye. So strong? Wang Changyuan raised his brows. Chapter 3371. One must know. This was the ultimacy, not the fifth ultimacy. Everyone knew that the ultimacy could kill an expert of the same realm in seconds. But now, these Perfection Dominator Realm beasts actually used the power of the mark to resist this attack. Don't make a fuss. And this is only a blood-red imprint. If it's a golden blood mark, it can recover by at least half in the blink of an eye. The white blood mark is even more terrifying. You've seen it on the 10th Elder's son and daughter-in-law. They can recover in the blink of an eye. I'll say it again. Don't fight. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. If this continued, even if Wang Changyuan and Pei Tianhong had mastered the ultimacy, they would only be beaten up. But if they wanted to escape, even the humans with the white mark wouldn't be able to stop them. Because Pei Tianhong had mastered the instant time. His speed was unmatched. Swoosh. Hearing Qin Feiyang's words, Pei Tianhong's heart sank. He activated the instant time again, and instantly appeared behind the beast tide. Roar. Thousands of beasts immediately turned around and roared, chasing after them. This isn't a beast tide. It's coming for them? The people and beasts watching from afar were stunned. They thought it was a beast tide, and were worried that the beasts would catch up. But it wasn't the case. But what was going on? Why were there so many ferocious beasts rushing towards Qin Feiyang's group? Looking at Qin Feiyang's group again, when they arrived at the back of the beast tide, their expression changed. There were thousands of people in front of them. There were men and women, old and young. They were all riding on beasts. Most importantly, whether it was these thousands of people, or the beasts they were riding, the blood mark between their eyebrows was golden, as if it was made of gold foil. And their cultivation was at the Perfection Dominator realm. Kill. Thousands of people and thousands of ferocious beasts stared at Qin Feiyang and the others. Their blood-red eyes emitted a cold light. As they roared in unison, thousands of people and thousands of ferocious beasts activated their fifth profound at the same time. Their densely packed attacks filled the void, and a destructive aura flooded the entire area. The earth was collapsing, and the void was being annihilated. It was simply shocking. Old Pei, quick! Whether it was Wang Changyuan, Frenzy, or White-Eyed Wolf, they all roared. What a joke! So many people and beasts activating their fifth ultimacy. What kind of scene was that? Even Wang Changyuan didn't have the courage to fight. Because even if you could deal with the fifth ultimacy, you wouldn't be able to kill these people and beasts quickly. Whether it was in terms of defense or recovery ability, the golden blood character seal was superior to the blood-colored blood character seal. So, the wisest choice was to hide. Who was Pei Tianhong's? Did he need their reminder? Seeing this scene, the first thing that came to mind was to hide. Swoosh. He activated the instant of time again, and instantly passed through the thousands of people and ferocious beasts, appearing behind them. However, a cold voice could be heard. Qin Feiyang and the others raised their heads, and saw 100 people standing in front of them. The blood mark between their eyebrows was white. These were the 100 generals under Huolong's command. Their ultimacy had been activated in advance. They seemed to have expected Qin Feiyang and the others to rush over. So, the moment Qin Feiyang and the others appeared, the ultimacy in the sky turned into a torrent and rushed toward Qin Feiyang and the others. Even if Pei Tianhong activated instant time, he couldn't avoid it. Wang Changyuan made up his mind. The Eye of Thunder reappeared and hundreds of lightning bolts shot toward the torrent formed by the fifth ultimacy. Rumble. A deafening sound suddenly resounded. A wave of destructive aura was born. It was like a raging wave in the ocean, rolling in all directions. The people and beasts with the blood and white blood ultimacy couldn't help but retreat. At the same time, Pei Tianhong also activated the law of time, and formed a barrier to protect Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf. At this time he couldn't attack. He had to stay beside Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. Moreover, he didn't dare to attack. If he accidentally got separated from Qin Feiyang and the others, then there would be no one to help him absorb the Yin Devil energy. When that time came, he would have to face the pursuit of Huolong's minions. Even if it was him, there would only be death. The rumble was deafening. This place had turned into primal chaos. Puff! Suddenly, Wang Changyuan spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned pale. At the same time, the hundreds of ultimacy were destroyed together with the torrent formed by the fifth ultimacy. What? This scene made Wang Changyuan extremely shocked. Although the other side had more people, it was only the fifth ultimacy. If this had happened outside, the world-extinguishing lightning light would have crushed everything in its path. But now, it was actually tied with the fifth ultimacy of these people? I didn't tell you. The blood ultimacy can not only increase defense and recovery ability, but also increase lethality. In short, this kind of ultimacy is an all-around improvement. Qin Feiyang secretly said. He looked at Pei Tianhong and shouted, "What are you standing there for? Hurry up and leave." Pei Tianhong was shocked by Qin Feiyang's words. All-around improvement? This was too abnormal. Then now, wouldn't he have to use the supreme ultimacy of the strongest law to defeat the 100 generals under the fire dragon? The supreme ultimacy of the strongest law, there was one here. He and the white-eyed wolf. But the moment of time was mainly to increase speed. If he was facing other enemies, he could use the moment of time to crush them, because no one could react to this kind of extreme speed, and no one could deal with it. Like a ghost, as long as he appeared behind the opponent would die without a doubt. But these 100 generals all had extremely astonishing recovery and defensibility. Even if a punch landed on them, it would not be able to kill them in one blow. If he could not kill them in one blow, then no matter what he did, it would be futile. As for the white-eyed wolf, needless to say, although he had mastered the supreme ultimacy of the three strongest laws, his cultivation was far from enough. Sigh. Pei Tianhong sighed secretly. He had come to the Yin demon land before, but had never encountered such a situation. He had never thought that there would be such a terrifying army of death hidden here. That's right. To them, the fire dragon's minions were an army of death. In the blink of an eye, the 100 generals in front once again activated their ultimacy. At the same time, the people and beasts behind also activated their ultimacy. At this moment, the people and beasts in the distance could not help but tremble. Facing such an encirclement, if it were them, they would have long given up. Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, Wolf King, Pei Tianhong, Wang Changyuan. Could they hold on? They were not worried about Qin Feiyang and the others, but they were looking forward to it. The story of Qin Feiyang and Madman had long spread throughout the Sky Cloud domain. Needless to say, Pei Tianhong and Wang Changyuan were legendary figures. What kind of miracle could these people create when they came together? But the result was destined to disappoint them, because now Qin Feiyang and the others did not have the intention to continue fighting. Hearing Qin Feiyang shout, Pei Tianhong directly, decisively, and neatly activated Moment of Time, and instantly appeared behind the 100 generals. Then, without any hesitation, Pei Tianhong activated Moment of Time, and led Qin Feiyang and the others into the depths without looking back. This, the people and beasts in the distance could not help but be dumbfounded. They thought that there would be an exciting battle. After all, Qin Feiyang had a sovereign weapon, and Pei Tianhong also had a sovereign weapon. But they did not expect them to escape directly. Wait, since they can't activate spatial divine items in the Yin Devil Land, then it's possible that their sovereign weapons are inside. So now they don't dare to fight head-on. Someone suddenly said, "It's possible. Otherwise, with Blood Hall's palace master Pei Tianhong's character, how could he escape without fighting? They are really stupid. They came to such a dangerous place like the Yin Devil Land, and actually put their sovereign weapons in a spatial divine item. But, it's strange. What's strange? Think about it. Since they don't have a sovereign weapon now, shouldn't they escape outside? Why are they running inside now? Yeah. Why is that? Could it be that they are afraid of getting us into trouble, so they didn't escape outside? How is that possible? Are they such kind people? Perhaps this matter is not as simple as what we see. I really want to go in and take a look. Everyone discussed in a low voice. There were indeed many people at the scene. They wanted to run in and take a look, but looking at the beast tied ahead, they couldn't help but feel their scalp tingle. This was not something they could meddle in, even if they wanted to watch the show. At the same time, the 100 generals stood in the same place, looking at the direction where Qin Feiyang and the others disappeared in silence. At the rear, the thousands of people riding the beasts, as well as the beast tide that rushed at the front, ran behind the 100 generals and remained motionless, as if they were giving some orders. In the inner area, the fire dragon looked at Qin Feiyang and the others fleeing in the image, frowned slightly, and muttered, "A moment of time, a bit unexpected. But even if there is a moment of time, as long as they enter the inner area, they will definitely die. You guys don't have to risk your lives. Surround them from behind and force them into the inner area. Perhaps there is no need to force them. Qin Feiyang may have guessed that I am in the inner area. If so, then he will definitely come." The fire dragon gave an order, then muttered a few words, and his face was full of a sneer. Although the fire dragon and the 100 generals were far away, the 100 generals clearly received the fire dragon's order. "Spread out, surround them, and force them into the inner area." One of the generals waved his hand. Immediately, a group of people and beasts spread out and continued to follow the 100 generals in a fan shape, rushing into the inner area. As for the people and beasts in the distance, even if they saw the 100 generals leave with their own eyes, they did not follow. There was a saying that curiosity killed the cat. He could go and take a look at some of the events, but some of the events would be fatal. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.